Okay.
look? How do I look, Martha?
Fantastic, as always.
For the project behind the Shacker Law.
They come to see you? I thought they said they were. Instead of taking that house.
Oh, no. I'll be nice to get my. Hey, we already talked, I already talked to him. I told him.
Okay, well,
John, did you have to send my
They don't want to tear down the house.
December goes on, December 13th.
anyway, the door's open, you can close it. I don't know. I really don't. I can tell you anything.
So I will see that.
Alright, well, I didn't know what the deal is. That may happen, that's all I said, gee, I wonder if you were responsible. What do you say? Say no. But it's still not too late. It's up to you. Anyways, think about it. You didn't hear that from me. No, you didn't hear it from me. You did it.
And I have to agree to it. So, yeah, so the amount of, what's the better food? Just come up and see. What days of the week is it? All right. I'm just curious how the barn is going. How it's placed in there.
It's all the way it was, nothing really changed.
I know they moved the water, you know, like the road coming up behind them. That one, that's what I'm
Oh, no problem. Hope you feel better. Everything go all right? Minor things, but there's a couple minor things in a row. So there's a couple minor things, and I can shoot you an email when I get out of the meeting, if I get out every time. Plan is that's time. So, and this, according to you, you're gonna what you're talking about. Not my issue, but it won't be something like, I guess there's lines here. You can't have lines going through text. Here, I know, it's a couple of lines going here. Again, it's not our issue, but you gotta take it down there, get it on board. So, but I'll shoot you an email, it's like 3 little things. So, as soon as I get out of here, I'll show you. All right?
On your places, if you can, please.
Wait, 2 weeks.
The equalies are up first, so if you want to get this. The equalies are up first, if you want to get this table, to the position. Okay, calling the meeting to order. We'll all start for a pledge of allegiance. Okay, start off with, the first public hearing we have is, Joe and Paula Eakley,
Joe and Paul Akeley have come back for an ask the board for a waiver. We've already have an approved subdivision, and they're asking for a waiver on a 4-to-1 slope on the side of the roads to a 3-to-1 slope. So, you're on.
Yeah, thanks for having us back again. This is the second time. Obviously, we kind of went over this before a couple weeks ago. Just asking for a waiver from the town ordinance from the 4-to-1 side slope to consider a 3-to-1 side slope. As Eric mentioned 2 weeks ago, this has no effect on the amount of drainage. Has a substantial effect on the cost and total scope of the project, as well as the limits of work. As you know, we're trying to keep the project and the road looking extremely rural and have a very low impact to the road and to the land that exists. And so this is all in the spirit of that.
Okay. John, we had something in the package tonight. It was a cross-cut of the road, I think it was the Eagle subdivision.
Yes, you know,
Does that show?
it does.
It only shows one.
that's all I have is that one. This wasn't.
Well, it's 2 pages. You only get one.
I only got one page.
What page you have, 8 or 9?
8. Does anyone else have page 9?
I'll do. Just 2 sections of the road. If you didn't get a page, what did you, was anybody making a page?
John, why don't you explain to everybody what page 8 and what page 9 are?
So page 8, it's the same plan, it's just the beginning and the first half and the second half of the road. So page 8 starts at Fox Point Road and goes to Station. Oh God, I can't even read the plan.
John, does this demonstrate the difference between the 4 and the 3 slope?
It does.
Okay, which one is the 4?
The 4 is the red, I believe. The 4 is the red, the 3 is the black.
That's correct.
So you can see the limits of grading
Yeah.
under the originally approved plan. I don't have a scale, but I would venture a guess it's probably, I don't know, 10, 12 feet, 15 feet beyond where the 3-to-1 slope grading is, in some spots. And I think, I haven't seen the quantities of material, but I know that, talking to Brandon, it's a significant amount of material.
It's supposed to be 6,000 yards according to what we heard last month.
Yeah, I can show you guys, I actually have packets made up individually for you that show the waiver request individually, also the site profiles and the 2 proposals back to back, if you actually would like to take a look at those.
I'd be curious to see what can you have a demonstration of what the slope is? Two different sheets?
Yeah, not the slope
The cross
necessarily,
cut.
but the amount of, material to be removed.
Alright. Can you just tell us that? I think this will go even faster than, I don't know.
Yep.
What's the difference in the material? I think you said 6,000 yards last meeting?
That's correct.
It was 300 truckloads, we determined at 20 yards, to do a 20-yard truckload. And we also talked about road damage. Those are the two positive upsides to go from a 4 to 1 to a 3 to 1, correct?
That's correct.
All right, any questions from the board about what we're trying to do here? Does everyone understand it? All right. Anything else you want to say at this point?
Nothing.
So, I'm gonna open it to the public at this point. Is there anyone in the public like to say anything on this? Does everyone from the public understand what we're talking about? All right. There being no one raising their hand, I'm gonna close the public meeting, and I'm gonna go into the discussion with the board. Eric explained to us last meeting, I think it was, that we were here, that you had no problems with the 3 to 1 versus the 4 to 1. And the difference is, probably the slope going down to someone's lawn would be, it's more, I guess, more mowable, not as deep, not as steep as a hill, but it's still mowable.
It's still mowable. To visualize, a 3 to 1 is what you see coming off of someone's septic system. It's a pretty sharp slope, but it is,
Is a foot?
yeah,
That's 3 to 1?
yeah.
4 to another foot. That's 4 to 1, not much difference. A big difference in the price, I guess. All right, that's the visual.
I don't think I need to say anything.
I thought it would cut a lot of talk. All right. There being no discussion, if no one has any discussion, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay? What's the motion?
The motion is to allow change for the allowance of a 3 to 1 slope where typical town of Newington zoning ordinance allows a 4 to 1 requirement.
Okay, Rick, you're gonna second it? All right. Is there any more discussion on the motion?
So Jim, you included in your motion that it's a waiver of section 5N, right?
You know, you read my mind,
That's
thank you
what-
very much.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah, you said ordinance, it's actually regulation, I believe, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris?
Just a point that we ought to plan to make this a permanent change to our subdivision regulations. As
Yeah,
far as-
we're gonna visit the regulations, I guess, as soon as we get out of this busy thing and look at changing that.
To facilitate that, I would like to ensure that we get advice from Eric as to at what point the change in slope will cross an unreasonable distance, and at what point in depth is necessary, what slope and what depth should be required for installing guardrails or local defenses.
Yeah, we can provide, when you get looking at, what I assume you're asking is, when you get ready to recraft that ordinance, that we should have, picking a number, between 0 and 4 feet of fill, it should be a 3 or 4 to 1. When it gets over a certain amount of fill, because it's gonna go out really far, it could be a 2 to 1, but it needs a guardrail, something like that. Yes, we
In
can
particular,
assist.
I'm looking because if there's a 1-to-1 slope, it only takes 2 feet of depth per foot, there's enough momentum for a car to roll over. But if there's a 3 to 1, that leverage isn't there, but the engineering of where that momentum comes from.
There's a nice little AASHTO chart on it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good, that's it, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. 10 minutes.
That was really easy. Okay, next on the agenda is the brewing company, Stoneface.
Steve, do you mind holding that, or do you want me to put it on the?
No, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you want to stand? Or not?
Actually, Dennis,
You want me to stand over there so you don't
Well,
hold
if
it?
you need to, I just,
I'm just trying to make it easier for you.
oh, just do that again.
Yeah.
Get a low battery.
before you begin.
If you don't mind, would you?
I'm going to be recusing myself from this, and it's actually for an interesting reason. It's not because of my brother-in-law, John Ritchie, building this. It's because of my relationship with Eric and Errol and my love of Stoneface. I don't think I can be objective, and therefore I'm just going to take it.
Hey,
We don't want to walk.
Yeah, I'm trying.
what does that stand for?
That sounds good.
Two ups and 2 downs?
This is gonna die in a bit better. So I'll go real quick. This is, you guys have seen this as this is a Stoneface Brewery. They exist on Shattuck Way as it is right now, in the blue building. They're gonna build a new facility up here down the street. 23,000 square foot building with associated parking. We went to the zoning board of adjustment in the existing building on site, got a ZBA variance to allow that, so it's gonna stay as well, an auxiliary building for the site. For all intents and purposes, would maximize the amount of parking we get on the parcel itself. We're utilizing some of the drainage that exists on site as well. Putting in the building, tractor trailer trucks and deliveries in the rear of the building, and access in through here for the front. A lot of different uses of the building itself, and the owners are here, they can explain more of the individual uses if you guys are inclined to want some information on that. It would have some external silo buildings, as well as discharge of materials that they use, and then just what they call a boneyard, where they'd have stuff stored outside within a fenced area, and then removed off the site. Utilities would be going out either to Shattuck Way or to River Road. And we would just use the curb cuts we're proposing 2 curb cuts to access the site. This would be predominantly for patrons coming in to come to the facility. The rear one's been designed to be able to accommodate tractor trailer trucks, actually as has this one as well, because they come in here, take some of the spent grain and leave from there. The number of parking spaces on site identified, it does meet all your code for zoning, does meet your requirements for parking, does meet all your requirements for setbacks. Again, we've gone to zoning board of adjustment and gotten variances associated with that, which is also labeled on the drawings themselves. And I think from a significant standpoint, we've spent a lot of time on this site trying to figure out how to make the site work. It looks like a great site to utilize. It's a wonderful site for Stoneface, where they want to be in Newington, and the visibility and the access to it. The bigger issue is actually the site itself, the topography of the site and where the water has to go. Luckily, we only have a small section of wetland impact that we're proposing. I think there's 300 square feet. Yeah, 285 square feet, which we're going to do the Concom for. There's also a really extensive landscaping plan that you guys have in your package, which is on the Concom as well. And we're going the 10th of February?
Yes.
February 10th for the Concom. So one of the major issues we have for the site is actually drainage. How to maintain it, how to mitigate it, and also how to treat it. This will be going to alteration terrain. We've already submitted the application to alteration terrain for stormwater. We've also submitted the application, well, actually it's not, we haven't submitted to DES for wetlands because it's going to be minimum expedited, and those 2 will go in. We've reached out to all the utility companies. We've gotten a response back from one of them so far, indicating that they have the ability to serve. And we know from our conversations both with water department, sewer department, electric and gas, that we would have a will serve letter from all those as well. Talking about drainage. Right now, what we're doing is we have to be able to treat all the runoff from the site. That's our AOT requirement as well as your rules and regulations. And to do that, we've had to come up with some fairly innovative ways to manage the stormwater. And the most significant here is that what we're draining is a portion of the parking lot along Shattuck Way, and then the area where the truck traffic is for the loading dock will be going into a holding tank, and then that stormwater during a storm event will be pumped and then hitting some treatment systems down on the west side of the site. The rest of the site, the building itself is going into stormwater collection system up against the building here, and the rest of the site is going into these grassed areas here being treated, going to a treatment swale, going to detention ponds, and then heading out from there. So we've done a pretty good job of mitigating both groundwater recharge, stormwater mitigation, as well as peak flows as well. Joe Griffin from my office can get into every detail associated with that if you guys would like. So we did explore one of our very first items when we first started looking at this design, so I'll kind of get some of this stuff out of the way now. There is a roadside ditch out here, which we had anticipated being able to utilize for stormwater, both for attenuation, treatment, and control, which we were going to actually accommodate some of Shattuck Way. But there's a little wetland here, a little less or a little bit more than 2,000 square feet of wetland in the roadside ditch.
So just to kind of follow along with what Steve is saying, you can't see that plan. If you look at page 5, which is the grading and drainage plan, you'll see that small pocket of wetland that he's talking about, which is to the east of the first driveway.
Yeah, so it's on Shattuck Way, just to the east of, you go to sheet number 5, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we went through a whole design phase with that. We actually had a pre-application meeting with New Hampshire DES on site. We had 2 meetings on site with them, plus another conference call twice after that. And they weren't too inclined to allow us to manipulate the existing wetland in the roadside ditch to be able to utilize that for stormwater mitigation, both for our site and also Shattuck Way. So that meant we had to flip-flop a little bit and figure out a different way to handle that. And predominantly, it's only the water that's coming down along the Shattuck Way side of the site, down into the area next to the loading dock itself. But the way to make that work, due to the grades that we have, is again, just a pump system for stormwater up into this area here. All the calculations have been provided, and Eric, or Altus Engineering, has provided a review letter, which we've gone through, and we do have answers and clarification on items as well. We also have the planner's letter as well. We have not made those changes to any of these plans that you guys are looking at now. The idea again was to go through planning board process, address these, and get one change. Some of the comments from Altus as well as the planner was just coordinating landscaping and lighting. No problem with that whatsoever. And if you want, we can go through the initial comments, but just want to kind of get that on the table. If you guys have any questions at this point.
Chris?
Yes, the flow is coming along Shattuck Way from the south access way to the property, all the way down to the wetlands, and that is the Shattuck Way off flow. And then it will go into that holding area and then go underneath the north access way, correct?
So the question is, yes, so water that's coming along Shattuck Way now in this roadside ditch will be maintained. Culvert under call this the easterly driveway, continue down the roadside ditch, through that wetland area, through another culvert under the westerly driveway, and then would discharge into the wetland on this side, which then goes underneath River Road. So all our stormwater runoff from our site that we're going to be generating actually goes into treatment systems and the existing detention pond site before it gets discharged.
Can you explain the riprap on the edge of
This here?
Yeah.
That's a riprap slope. So what we're doing there is we're just armoring that slope. So instead of putting a retaining wall in, instead of having it grass, what we're trying to do is just, if we can eliminate the riprap, we will. If we can get probably closer to a 2.5 to 1 or 3 to 1, it'll just be grass.
So there's no push over that or?
Snow storage will be actually, on the other plan we have is down in the areas here, would be outside of the wetland buffers.
So there's no intention for water to flow off the pavement?
Hey, Chris, if no one objects, I'm gonna ask Chris to remove his mask while he's talking. Is that okay with everybody? Jane, are you okay with your closest to him? Because we can't hear you, Chris.
Just to clarify that, thank you. Just to clarify that any flow off the pavement is not intended to flow across the riprap, nor is any snow intended to be pushed into that wetlands area.
Yes, your assumption is correct.
All set? Anyone else? Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Paul Reed, Patterson Lane. I'm familiar with the lot that you're talking about. And there is a lot of adjacent wetlands in that immediate area. You didn't hear what I said?
Well, they can't hear what you said.
Oh.
Give that a shot before it dies. Do you have another battery?
Paul Reed, Patterson Lane. I just want to make the comments that I live over there and I'm familiar with the lot and where that building is located. And there's wetlands in there, serious wetlands.
It's not turned on still?
It's just dying. These are not working.
Paul, I understand you say, like, right, that you think there's a lot of wetlands on this site? Is that what you?
Definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
I mean, they've tried to fill it, there's been some fill put in there, but it's not really, doing what it was supposed to. And it is wetlands, and I don't know how you could, put this project in there with that situation the way it is.
Does the applicant want to talk about this at all?
Sure, I can. You guys may be aware that this site was actually utilized by Eversource at one point. The development that you have there now and all the design items that were there, the treatment systems, or I should say the detention pond that's there and the gravel that's there now was previously approved. So we're just taking it from there going forward. So we're not impacting the wetlands in any way, shape, or form, other than the 300 square feet that I just described, which is just for a treatment swale, a little section of a treatment swale. The rest of the work that we're doing, there's no other wetland impact whatsoever.
Paul, do you understand that? It was already approved and they received an AOT from the Department of Environmental Services when Eversource went in there. They're using the same AOT permit to build their facility, and DES has looked at the wetlands and I believe they got, do I have that? Not AOT, it's,
Actually, so the original alteration, we're adding to the original AOT permit. So the original AOT permit was issued, we're asking for a brand new one, but it's essentially the same
you're not
footprint.
getting the same one? Okay.
No.
So it has to get, if they changed it at all, they have to get permits from DES, and I know DES is pretty stringent,
Right.
that I can see. So I feel confident with that. But I hear you, because there is a lot of wetlands that between the existing building that's already out there, that's when it's falling down, they're gonna tear it down. And where they're building it, there's like, in the springtime and spring thaw, there's like almost a river through there.
Right. That's
They're
true.
staying away from that completely.
Right, I mean, they've come in and they've filled in with topsoil in a part of it already. Somebody's come in there and graded it. But, like I said, you've got wetlands behind it. You've got wetlands that run under that road into the river. And it's where they want it, to me, is not acceptable.
All right, I guess I have to trust the New Hampshire Department of DES for Environmental Services for making that decision, but I do think they're maintaining the setbacks. And was there any waivers that you received or variances for the setbacks?
The only, the variances we got were for the setbacks along, because you have 75-foot of setback on both
Yep.
River Road and Shattuck Way. So we have dimensional setbacks is what we got.
Okay.
That was it.
All right. So they're within the law of what they're doing, Paul. I hear what you're saying, but,
I mean, if you put a foundation in there, it's gonna be underwater. One time or another, that's how wet it is in there. It's running off, it goes under the road, into the river, but it also sits there in that field. I live there, I know.
I think most of us know that site, we all know that it was the Eversource laydown area. Many of us have been on that lot, because we've, met to do site walks at the medical office facility. So Paul could be correct, there could be some ponding out there. When Eversource left, they removed and rough graded the lot. It may not be perfect, but, these wetlands were delineated, and I don't remember who did them for Eversource, but our own wetland scientists verified those wetland delineations, several years ago. So I'm confident that the wetland delineation shown on this plan is accurate, and that's not to say I drive by this site fairly regularly, and I haven't seen ponding, but again, it wasn't graded. I don't think it was ever graded with the intention of leaving it like it is forever, because the intention was to sell it and develop the lot. So, and I think the same thing with the medical office facility, that was graded in the same manner, and if you look at how it turned out, I think it's a pretty nice site. So I think I have confidence that the wetland delineation is accurate on this site, and there is almost no impact as a result of this project.
thank you. All right, any other questions? This is really not a public hearing at this point. At this point, it's just a public meeting, but I'm taking any comment we can get. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, we're looking, if you guys are gonna accept the application so we can move forward, that's what we're looking for tonight.
This is really two-part, one for you, Paul. Could you identify, I don't see them on the plan, could you point to the culverts across Shattuck Way as well as what's the back road? River Road, okay. And the direction of flow. And the second part is for you, Eric, to address how the overall drainage flow from Shattuck Way, River Road, and the end result of the water coming out of treatment swales, which will eventually build up in a long-term storm, where that will be going, and how confident are you that the existing structure is going to handle the flow and the directions without flooding the parking lot and things like that? So your part first.
Well, Chris, let me just interrupt. You said you didn't see where these culverts are. If you look at the first page of the plan set, which is the survey, it actually calls out the culverts on there, the size and the location, just for future reference. They are actually on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just did not see them
No,
as part of the drainage.
No, I agree with you. Yeah,
Where they're more applicable.
absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, we'll clarify that as we need to. And just so you know, Chris, we spend a lot of time on drainage. I mean, 99.9% of every project is how do we deal with stormwater?
This is your chance to show all your good results then.
Yeah, well, and Eric's gonna have an opportunity, he's looked at it already. I mean, this is what we spend the majority of our time doing. So we're pretty confident the way we put the system together addresses not only your guys' rules and regulations as well as this TES.
Okay,
So to identify the flow and the.
Oh, yeah, so right now,
Going each direction?
it comes from this side, goes through the wetlands here, comes back across this way. So it's essentially going from north to south, goes from Shattuck Way through the site, underneath River Road, Eventually it goes across into the state highway. There's a huge treatment system as well as swales that come all the way down this direction, probably about 600 yards. And then goes back across through systems and then goes down to the river. So our system here, this whole Shattuck-Way system goes through, well, not all of it, but quite a bit comes through Shattuck-Way, off Shattuck-Way, comes through our site, goes into the DOT, and then continues on.
I think that's worthwhile, Mr. Chairman, because I don't think most people realize the drainage of the east side of Shattuck-Way actually crosses onto this property, and then crosses River Road and goes back toward the Spalding Turnpike system. And Paul, that should make you feel better from the standpoint, all that water is coming through away from Patterson Lane area and going down to near the Customs Pool area and crossing back over and not going down toward the Patterson Lane area. So hopefully that gives you the idea.
I mean,
that
there's standing water over there now,
Yes, that's correct.
you know, I mean.
But Patterson Lane is a good, almost 10 feet higher than this site anyways, because it comes down from Patterson Lane down this direction, so. It's a pretty extensive system. We talked to DOT about it as well, and it flows that direction.
I fully think that Paul's point is key, is that there's standing water now, there'll be a little more standing water in big storms that come through, but eventually the direction the court flows into the state DOT drainage system, but it's gonna be slow because the grade is minimal, would you say, or?
And we've actually designed for our system to handle that, so you're not gonna, our site, the way we've designed it right now, is not gonna impact the storage capacity of the wetland that exists there now. So we're not increasing that flow or the volume of water in there, what, a tenth of a foot? Yeah, decrease, well, basically it stays the same, if not just a little bit less, so. Suffice it to say, we've spent an awful lot of time making this work, and making sure we try to cross all the T's and dot all the I's on that.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Since we're talking about the storm drainage, it was not clear to me to see, I have to really look, and the small planes don't help. But what I caught on to was this 10,000 gallon stormwater tank. I assume it's steel,
Nope, concrete.
concrete. All right, and that you're actually gonna have, I believe, our pumps to pump that water out, I think is what you said earlier, so, do you have a backup pump?
Yeah, so it's a dual system.
That's what I thought.
The site will have a generator.
Why aren't you using gravity?
This is the high side of the site.
Yep,
This is the low side of the site.
yep.
This is the loading dock, so we're actually creating a little bit of a bowl in that location for the loading dock, because they need an external loading dock 4 foot. And so that area that we have right here, that's where the water's gonna collect, and we're gonna pump it back up this direction to the low side.
Is that, I think I saw there an 1 3/4 slotted drain, and I thought I saw the detail in the back. Is it a 15-inch pipe, roughly, slotted pipe?
18-inch.
18-inch? How does that get cleaned out?
It doesn't need to be. So you're gonna have volume and flow flowing through there, goes into the 10,000 gallon tank. 10,000 gallon tank, the pumps themselves will set up off the bottom, so any sludge that gets in there, they would maintain that. So just to be perfectly clear, the owners know that they have to maintain the system. This is not one of those you forget about it. If for whatever reason, and actually, it's surprisingly, the slotted drain itself well accommodates the volume of flow that we're anticipating coming off the site. So we've done all those calculations as well. These guys know and live here, so if they have an issue, they will be maintaining it and take care of it. This is not something that they can forget about. We've designed the system so that you have a pair of pumps. Each one has its own discharge pipe, so that if one pump goes down, the other one can still pump. and they would be alternating. So just like we would normally on a septic system design, alternating pumps, pump one pumps the first time, pump two pumps the second time, and if both needs to go, then both pumps go on. The calculations show that for a 2-year storm event, you only need one pump. A 10-year storm event, you'll need both pumps, and then every other storm after that, you'll need both pumps as well. But you'll see that with the calculations, which you guys don't see, you don't care so much, but the peak volume of flow, the pumps as it was designed with the hydrology and everything else, well accommodate that.
All right, so you have concrete, you said the concrete. I'll hold my question. Concrete, I'm not sure how you're gonna make it with concrete. Are you assuming you're gonna pour is gonna be watertight?
Yeah,
It'll be like, I'm assuming it'll be like a fire.
it's just a septic thing, same as everything.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanna, I know you're gonna be down into the water table at that point. If you're gonna put anything of
Can I
ten.
steal anyone else's?
I've got mine right now, I'm using it. We're just have to yell about it.
All right, I will.
I'm just concerned that you're gonna be pumping forever there, and I just hate to see.
So before you go any further, Dennis, this is not our preferred methodology. This is the default to what we have to do based on the fact that we're not able to get DES at this point to agree to what we think is the most prudent way to handle the drainage on this site. The interesting thing is, the way we've designed it is that if perchance this area and the pump itself fails and there's no one around because it's a 50-year storm event, this water still, the low point on this site is still on that side of the site, so in fact will drain off the site into the roadside ditch. So we have the opportunity here that you will have some flooding in the parking lot for a while. I think it was less than a foot, half a foot, 0.6 of a foot. That in the event that this pump doesn't go, it will then discharge over the site. So you have redundancies built in here, plus the fact that this is an institution that wants to be able to maintain their systems and they know about it. And they're here, so it's not like they don't understand what they're doing.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I truly believe it. I also think that this is gonna be a very expensive system to install and then to keep up. And in my opinion, that the gains that you have from something that was man-made several years ago because the Rogue Shattuck Way was built, and then what Eversource did to fill in the land around here, created that little wetland there, and I really think that is something that ought to be considered to be used, as you were talking about draining on the north or the south end of this parking lot you were talking about, and go down through that. So why can't we do that? I know there's a wetland there, but I think, can we not talk to DES and say, hey, can we do something here, and instead of putting all the money into this, let us give you the money for that, and then we're done once and for all. We don't have to pay for energy, we don't have to pay for anything, and they've got mitigation funds to help mitigate that wetland that you're gonna disturb.
We are happy to have the town of Newington partner with us to try to get DES to acquiesce to what we think is a very common sense way to handle this.
All right.
But what I'm saying to you guys right now, based on the way it's designed, it will work.
I understand
We
that.
analyzed it, we got it, it works. We were able to treat all the stormwater. We're able to hit all the EOT requirements relative to everything that needs to happen. This site doesn't.
Okay? I'm just telling you, it's just my opinion that I
No,
think the other way is foolproof.
We agree with your opinion 100%.
So I'm willing to support that, but I'm not sure if the rest of the board is, but I think it's what makes sense. I'm gonna go on to the next issue.
Can I ask you, just to follow up, Steve, how hard would it be for you to show us, I'm assuming you have some sort of a design that you show DES? Is that something, you obviously are meeting with the Conservation Commission on the 10th of February. Is that something you can provide the planning board and the Conservation Commission? Because I think that the town would be, I'm not a wetland scientist, but I can't believe the value of that wetland along Shattuck Way is very high.
Matter of fact, we've had not one, but we have two, actually three different soil scientists have that exact same comment. They have all indicated that that wetland is of low functions and values in every way, shape, or form. And I'd be happy to provide you guys with the grading plan that we have that will work
Okay.
to make that work as well.
I would suggest that, because that's really the common sense thing. I don't like impacting wetlands, but at the same time, we can do something to mitigate it.
So Dennis, I'll reiterate, we have tried. And the pushback that we've gotten from DES is that they said, we will not accept your application if you're proposing to fill or impact 2,000 square feet of a wetland in a roadside ditch. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
That's amazing, because.
So can I just chime in? I had a meeting on another project with DES staff, and I mentioned this to them. And what I understood from my walk away, I didn't have the plans in front of me, and it was the coldest day of the year, and it was in the field, was that DES would support an impact to that wetland, provided you provided treatment ahead of it, of the pavement, or not. So whether you did some sort of gravel wetland or something along that swale area, and then discharged into that wetland, and then provided treatment at the outfall of that wetland. So that was what I walked away, is something that they would support,
Yeah.
and that they had an approach, and they didn't say no, they just said they didn't want it built.
Yeah, you're exactly correct, because they said the same thing to us. The problem that we have is you can't detain anything you can't detain anything in the wetland, and we can't treat anything coming out of the wetland on that side. And on the upper hillside, because we have to detain the water, we're actually utilizing that roadside swale both for detention and treatment at the same time. So we created a big treatment swale. They're fully aware of what we designed, and everything you just said is the same conversation we had with them, almost verbatim. But when we showed them,
They didn't make that up.
no, you didn't. But the answer was that we'll let you put water through it, Steve, or Civil Works, but we don't want you really to impact it. And so the area that we have available to us, we can do some treatment, but we can't do any detention associated with it to take care of the rest of the water we deal with. So there's not just one thing, which is letting water flow through. It's also treating it, also mitigating the peaks. So what Eric said, that's the same conversation we had. It's just you can't make that work and still make the site accommodate.
Thank you. Jim, do you have a question?
Yes. It'll be a quick one, and then I'll have to excuse myself because dinner did not settle well. From what I understand, two different things: natural wetlands and that created by unintended consequences. We had the highway come through. From what I've now heard from a third person, the wetlands that have been created as to where Stoneface is looking to be built was a creation due to the highway and the trappings of the water. True or not, don't know. In that kind of situation, I don't think there's a way to naturally treat it because it's shed off the highway. So I think the only way, I think you were talking about, that the state was going to allow it, is you would have to treat it coming off the highway before it hit the wetland, divert it around, and then, I don't know if that financially is doable or not. Is that what you're trying to say?
So part of that. So what they're saying is treat the water before they'll go through the wetland. They're saying they have no problem with us putting water through the roadside ditch wetland. I'm going to talk directly if you don't mind. Putting water directly through the roadside ditch, but the problem is there's not enough room to take the water off of Shattuck Way, treat that plus ours, plus mitigate all sorts of stuff. So our idea was to utilize that wetland, since it is that has a natural function for stormwater retention, to utilize in our whole system design. And that's the one that they were balking at. Letting water flow through it, thumbs up, but that doesn't solve our problem relative to all the other stormwater mitigation issues.
All right. I think John, we could work with John. I think John had indicated that probably the town would support, even working with the Conservation Commission, anything we can do, because I hate to see useless energy being used when Mother Nature gave us gravity, you know? All right, so I'm gonna go on to some other things here.
parking capacity versus, your capacity of the building. I think I saw 400 something people for the capacity of the building.
So the way the architect, and Pete or Errol will talk more about that, but the way Holden had put the building, Winter Holden, the architect put the building, it has a capacity for 458 or something, 457 people.
Right.
But when you look at the seat count that they had as well, so what we did is the parking count that we have is maximized to what we can put on the site itself. So we're in between the low and the high on that site. So I understand that from a building inspector standpoint, they'll rate the building for some seating capacity. Whether that's based on parking or not, I don't know.
Well, I think that's what we do here.
Okay, so
All right, so the question I have is, I don't wanna get to a situation that we're in right now at the brewery, a few years from now, when you put up the new brewery, because you got a lot more customers and a lot more brews. All right, so I see 400 something, 460 something, and only 168 parking spaces.
well,
And a lot of times with people going home on Friday night after work, they wanna stop in for one, that's when the problem occurs.
yeah, Pete and Errol can tell you more about what their general
All right.
usage, but.
So I'd like to have an explanation on that, if I can get that.
Yeah.
When they wanna do it, we can move on to the other things. Sewer line capacity, I wanna make sure that, I know the sewer plant has capacity for you, but is the line and the pump that's there capable? I wanna hear that from the sewer commission.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so I think it's.
So we've already met with Dennis on that already. He's already,
Dennis Messier?
Dennis Messi,
Yeah.
he's all set with it, he's just waiting for his letter.
So Dennis, just to the board, as a reminder, we're not really creating new flow here. We're moving flow, and it's all going to the same pump station.
I just wanna make sure the pump,
So another brewery could move in where they are, but that would be another,
That's
that'd
their
be
problem.
another issue. But in reality, we're taking flow, adding a little capacity, hopefully a lot, and moving it to a different location along Chapel.
I understand it's a force main there, is that correct?
Uh,
Part of it's force main.
So we're gravity feeding in and heads down the hill, and then it does get pumped up, that's correct.
I just wanna make sure that the lines that are there,
So we have the exact same question, and that's why you asked for a will serve letter, and we've met with the sewer department, and they've already indicated, over an email or otherwise, that they're okay with what we're proposing.
I wanna make sure it's not just the capacity of the sewer treatment plant,
I
but also
understand
the
exactly what
capacity
you're
of the line. That's what I'm asking.
Dennis,
Yes.
the water that's running now goes under the road, down through the woods and into the river. There's a lot of flow, there's a lot of water flow coming across from there, going into the Piscataqua River. There's a path probably 3 feet, 4 feet wide, and it's steadily running, the water's coming from Shattuck Way, going right down through the woods and into the river.
The only stream that I'm aware of is the one that's at the north end of the property, and it flows across our property, under River Road,
Yeah.
and then, as we explained, out to the Spalding Turnpike, and then back around, and comes back around, and eventually gets down to the Spalding, down to the Piscataqua River. That's the only one that I am aware of.
Right, that's the one I'm talking about. So this water is eventually getting into the river. Sure.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's treated first through these treatment swales, and that's what DES looks at to make sure. That's the reason why they're being forced to, they're looking at putting in a 10,000 gallon tank, plus 2 pumps and all the plumbing that goes with it. It's very costly.
So let me, if I can, talk a little bit further about drainage and some of the drainage issues in this area. The cross culvert on Shattuck, west of here, near Custom Pools, where all that flow is crossing back over, has been having some capacity issues.
We can hear you over here. We can't have 2 conversations going on at the same time.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So, as you know, the culvert down near Custom Pools has been having capacity issues. We're not sure if that's a problem that was caused by the recent improvement to the Spalding, but this water once it crosses under, River Road, as we're talking about, and runs towards Custom Pool, is part of that same watershed that we have a lot of concerns, and we're working with DOT with right now through the Board of Selectmen. So what happens here could impact what's happening there, so that's why it's very important.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, knowing the whole watershed, what's coming to it, the peaks and so forth, so that we don't have unintended consequences of, yes, we're reducing the flow from the site, but we might be increasing the overall peak in the watershed and causing problems downstream.
Yeah, I'm not sure, the answer to that is, typically we don't look at the entire watershed for a site. We usually look at our site, mitigate our site for what we need to do. And we've looked at contributing area for this and what we're impacting to that. We're extremely confident that what we're doing on our site isn't gonna exacerbate stuff on down the hill.
And are we getting any information to Eric, Altus Engineering, to make
Oh,
sure
yeah.
that we can handle all that? Because the last thing I wanna see is that we have a, 100-year event, and then the next thing we find out is that that entire site, for some reason, because of the modifications done on the Spalding Turnpike, have created a problem, or anywhere. I just wanna make sure that we're not creating a problem.
I'm not trying to be glib, but if we have a 100-year storm event, the least worry we're gonna have is whether or not a site is underwater. But to be perfectly honest with you, to be perfectly frank, what we do is we look at the 2, the 10, 25, the 50. We even look at, we have 100 in there as well? We don't have 100, we're at the 50 anyways. So those volumes of water, those aren't linear, I mean, they're exponential. So, the systems that what we're trying to design to, if we could go back to what we did 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was 10-year storm event was what we used to design to, because a 10-year storm event is extremely dramatic. But, that being said, the answer is that we have those, and Eric's gonna get responses to his questions, and we have all that information. He doesn't have it yet, because again, we're going through this process today before we do that.
Paul, I will get to you in a minute. I'm trying to get some more questions asked if I can, okay? All right, thank you. You checked with the fire chief, make sure with fire alarm, are we going wireless there, or are we gonna be underground?
But before, do you guys have to accept the application for these conversations first?
No.
Okay, all right. Fire chief, you guys talk to him yet?
We talked to them months ago about.
I have.
Well, you have, okay, all right, so answer yes.
All right, John, I heard about the hydrants. They wanted to locate where the hydrants were. I wanted to make sure that the connection for the fire alarm system, all that, we're on up to speed. But what you show in your utility plan, I think it's on page
It was like 6 or 7.
6, it's on page 6. You don't show any communication lines, but I do look at the detail in the back of the plans, that does show communication line. And I'm not sure what the fire chief is using these days. Are they using a wireless system? Are they using, the wires? Anyway, I just don't see any duct work there. I just see, I think it says PE, that's doing, that's electrical?
We use it for the holder for both.
Okay, but you are gonna go according to the detail in the back?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
oh, yeah.
Just wanted to make sure about that, okay. I assume you're gonna have, I don't need to ask that question too before. The lighting plan, I could not read, it's so small, I could not read the details, so I assume it needs to have no light going off site as we require at the boundary.
The answer to that is yes, but general, so that both Altus and your planners had a couple of questions. We'll clarify that with the landscape plan as well as the lighting.
Okay, also you show in your detail, the wall packs, there's 2 different wall packs you got showing.
Yep.
One that shines out, one that shines down, which one are you gonna use?
We'll probably use them both in the different locations. The one in front will probably be along.
Okay, let's talk about the wall pack that shines out. We typically don't, we've been trying to get away from those completely.
Well, the only issue we have there is for the wall packs for the areas along where pedestrians will be coming along in front. So your lighting plan actually takes that into account.
So there's another thing that's other than the illumination of lumens, it's the brightness of it, how bright it can blind you. I'll give you an example, where Walmart is right now, there used to be another store that was there, they're now gone, but they put in lights, and if you're driving southbound on a Spalding Turnpike, they would blind you on a dark night, you couldn't see where you're going. But yet there was no visible light
on the ground per se, that you see, but it was just very, very bright. You know, there was-
Yeah, I
And
think,
we asked them to, when Walmart, we asked them to change the lights because it was creating a hazard on the highway, and they did. But if you went by what our specifications say, requirements, it says, you know, the amount of foot candles along the edge of the property, is to be 0, but it could still be very blinding. If you understand what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. So this system design is dark sky compliant, everything else that you guys are looking for as well. So it's standard.
It's just the wall pack you had, what page of the wall pack on?
17.
17, thank you. And you show too, the one is shining down really good, and you see the light that's on the pole right next to it? It's like a box, and we have these box lights that have been put up on the side of the building before, instead of a wall pack that shines out. I'm just saying, just be considerate of that, I mean, talk to the lighting engineer, because we're trying to stay away from them. They're just very, they create a lot of light pollution, that particular wall pack. And a lot of it was up.
So if I could expand on that a little bit, so something I noticed today, that the brick patio area that you have shown on the site plan is actually not just a patio, there's actually a deck above that,
Yes.
which I hadn't noticed before, so now it's really unclear, you have 2 building mounted lights that are on that, are they under the deck, over the deck, do you need 2 sets of lights, or what is your intent for that area?
Yeah, we'll work with the architect to make sure that they're positioned correctly. But the lights that you're looking at right now would be, the deck is here, and they're just off to the side of that on the wall.
So,
We'll make sure that those are clarified.
so Eric brings up a good thing, and I was looking for some renderings on the building itself. I can only have this one little tiny one there, but I don't see the 4 sides.
They're in
They're in there.
They're in there?
there. Yeah, keep going.
Ah, they are. How come I couldn't find them earlier? All right. Thank you. Bathrooms, I see on the second floor, you got 2 bathrooms, I assume, there's, on the second floor, it looks like there's 2 bathrooms up there. I assume there's 1 male, 1 female, was it? And then on the bottom floor, what's going on there?
So, what I will say is the building will meet code.
I just asked you what's going on there. It looks like it's a shared bathroom.
Okay, I don't know. My point to you is that the architect is the one who designs the interior of the building.
The architect here?
The architect is not here, but the owners are here, they can tell the intent. And I know for a fact, like it is on every building, that this will meet code.
Okay, I believe you. It's a bit unusual from what I can see. I'm trying to have somebody explain it to you, make sure I get it right. What is going on? Do males and females walk into the same room and just grab a stall that's open?
There's not a room, Dennis. You walk in, there's hand wash sinks on both sides, and then you go left to right, and you decide which bathroom you want to go in, but they're all individual bathrooms.
But they're all, individual closets.
Yes.
Stalls, individual stalls.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm just trying to understand that.
yeah.
They're not a stall, then, they're actually like a closet.
It's a door, yeah, it's your own.
Well, I don't know if
It's a full door, it's not a stall door with an opening at the bottom, it's a full door.
Yeah, it's an actual door.
It's modern, a lot of places have it now.
I haven't seen any.
You need to get out more.
I get it a lot. I haven't seen one like that. I probably wouldn't go to a place like that.
You're still welcome, Dennis.
I thank you. Are there any urinals in there? Are they just all toilets? Don't know. Architect.
I don't know.
Does the owner know?
So, you have an individual door into a toilet, which is a hell of a lot better in my opinion, than having a bunch of stalls and, you can kind of see through the cracks, provides a lot more privacy, individual ventilation. It's innovative.
Okay, so you have walls built from the floor to the ceiling.
It's like you're going into a water closet in a house.
Okay. I
I was thinking it's those stalls that
No,
like you see.
absolutely not.
I have no
Door in the
idea.
box.
I have no idea.
Yes,
So,
it's gonna be great.
all right. Okay, any questions? I think, Paul, you have your hand?
Yes, what about pollutants running through the water, they going down into the river, Dennis? Is that checked periodically for pollutants? You going over underland, overland?
I'm not gonna, I'll try to answer it, but I think the question is that you get probably oils and so forth that come off the roads that we all drive on, and we all have cars that drip a little bit of oil, or we have contaminants from the exhaust and so forth. As far as I know, it goes into, off the road, into the swales, and then through water treatment, which is basically plantings and what's the word I want here? Rain gardens.
Who does the testing, Dennis?
Nobody does the testing as far as I know. Nobody tests that. Eric, do you have a better answer than that?
I think Steve does.
Go ahead, Steve.
So the systems we have on site are all the standard BMPs that you'll have with Hampshire DES. We have rain gardens, we have infiltration systems, we have treatment swales. These are all standard tried and true BMPs, which we have to implement on all the sites now. So Chris, when I was saying that we spend 99% of our time on drainage, we spend 99% of our time on drainage to accommodate all of those treatment concerns and treatment issues we need to address, both from DES as well as yours. So everything from this site.
I think it's fair to say though, Steve, on this site, you have something that a lot of sites don't have, and that is you got a giant wetland that, and all the water's going in one side, coming and leaving the other, so that's gonna provide an incredible amount of treatment that most sites don't have.
So yes, the answer to that is yes, but we're also treating it long before it gets discharged to the wetland.
I understand, but that provides a level of treatment that a lot of sites don't enjoy.
Yeah.
So the other, also answer is, there's not testing of the stormwater, but there's required inspection, monitoring of each one of the best management practices to make sure that there is no erosion, that they're actually working and so forth, and that needs to be reported to DES on an annual basis.
Yeah. So, thank you. SWIP, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Control Plan, and constant monitoring both during construction and after that. So the owners have the responsibility for maintaining the stormwater maintenance system.
So who would do the testing? The town?
No, the town doesn't do any testing, the state doesn't do any testing, and the owners don't do any testing.
Nobody does it.
Nobody does any testing.
Not in terms of water, no one tests stormwater, they don't go around town and take water samples and drainage ditches. But what Steve is saying and what Eric Weinberg, our town engineer, was saying was that the design has to clean all the contaminants out before it discharges off the site. But there's nobody from any agency, the town included, that's gonna measure that, or that's gonna monitor that water quality.
I mean, is there solid piping running right to the river's edge?
No. It's a combination, I mean, there is pipe, and, I mean, the water from this site is, what, a quarter of a mile from the edge of the river?
More than that.
What?
It's almost a half a mile from this site before it gets all the way down through and gets down back down to the square.
So there's a long, and it's probably a combination of open drainage, wetlands, pipes, before it gets to the river.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a couple other questions. Is there a reason why you wanna put the silos up front? That's your main entrance. And why are we putting them more towards the back, other than the fact I see they're very close to the brewery itself?
Yeah, the function on the site, we've done.
Pete, you gotta stand up and,
Sorry.
no one can hear you.
Yeah, take off your mask if you wish, we can hear you.
Sure. The layout of the site, we've done it 10 ways, and the only way it works is with them there. I mean, they'll be painted nice, they won't be dirty, they'll be clean. It's really the only place that we can put them that's accessible to the deliveries and any susceptible hallways or.
Okay, what about the waste? That's not where the waste goes. We have a separate container for that, am I correct?
The waste, the spent grain goes into one of those silos.
Oh, I thought there was only one silo, I'm sorry.
There's two side by side.
There's two side by side, yeah. Yeah, they're welded steel, painted nice, shiny,
So can you actually explain a little bit about the spent grains and the deliveries, you know, and because Steve prepared a stormwater management plan and best management practices and maintenance, but, you know, is there any need for additional controls with, spent grain spillage and so forth?
So it's all just organic material. It's literally barley malt that is an all-natural material that we use in the brewing process. So the fresh grain silo gets filled once a week with a pneumatic truck that just fills it. And then once we're finished with the process, it's literally just all the sugar has been taken out of the grain, and it's really good compost. And that gets put back into the spent grain silo and hauled off site. And it's typically right now what we do is we send it to a pig farmer in open bed trailers, but with this volume and a spent grain silo, it'd be a heck of a lot easier to send it off. We could, you know, we could potentially sell it. We might be able to continue to use the farm we have with a bigger truck, and that thing would get empty, you know, once a week as well.
Is there any chance of, it's the organics and it does go back to the stormwater?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's organic, but it also has a load on the environment, so make sure that there isn't spillage, or if there is spillage, how it gets dealt with.
Yeah, the great thing about it is that it's a sealed system, so if there's no way for it to spill unless somebody leaves the valve open and a truck drives away. If that happens, it's a pile of grain on the ground that it's literally the consistency of grape nuts, like grape nut cereal. You just shovel it up into a bin, sweep it up once it's dry, and it's pretty much good to go.
Thank you. Any questions from the board members? Any other ones? Okay, who is it that can talk about the parking versus the capacity? Is that person here?
Other than what I just told you, relative to what Winter Holden had maximized the overall seating capacity of the facility.
I just don't want to create I want some assurances from somebody here that, as we got during the last story, that someone's going to step forward and say, we will not exceed our parking.
I can talk a little bit about that. So the calculations on the building are like just bonkers. It's too many people. So
Why, Pete? Just explain why.
Yeah, so we expect to have, we expect to, double, maybe, 1.5 times the capacity that we currently have, which is around 100 seats. And we have about 35 parking spots currently in that side. And that fills up because multiple or individual people come to the brewery in one car and meet up after work, for example. So we do see some overflow on Fridays and Saturdays. Not all the time, but it does happen. So if we double or even 1.5 times the capacity of the restaurant, that's 250 people at most, which is the parking lot can easily accommodate that based on what we've experienced so far. So one of the big considerations in this plan was maximize the parking and make sure that we're not going to have any problems going forward with parking. The big motivator by capping out at that spot is we're only going to ever have 50 employees. So at the absolute worst case scenario is, and which is something we can't even imagine, 300 people in that building. There's just no way. There's no way that's going to happen.
Well, you would hope it would.
Well, I don't know, and I will take your second. I hope it doesn't, because everybody would have a lousy experience. We wouldn't be able to accommodate that many people. We can't wait on that many people. It'd be, people would be waiting. It's just awful. So we would resist, we do everything in our power to resist that. We don't want that to happen. So even though the calculation on the capacity of the building, a lot of it has to do with the warehouse space. The capacity of the warehouse space is like 100 people. There's only ever going to be 20 people back there working midday during the week. So, we're looking at this, we're saying this is way more parking than we need. Worst case scenario, if 300 people in that building, two people per car, that seems reasonable to us.
So Pete, can you talk further about your manufacturing operation? Obviously, this is going to be a different game for you. It's a new facility, bigger facility. when are you think you're gonna have 50 some odd employees? Is that 3 shifts a day, 2 shifts a day, and when do these people work? And how do they conflict with I'm assuming your busiest time is what, 4 to 8
Yeah,
p.m.?
busiest times are usually, Thursdays at lunch, Fridays around dinner time, Saturdays most of the day. Shift-wise, we have currently about 10 people that work in production and a bunch of people that work in the office. But there's still only 40 employees total, which includes, 20 or so restaurant workers you're talking about. Those are pretty heavily shifted, right? So, there's only probably 10 people that work in the restaurant currently. We expect that to increase a bit, with the larger facility and, likely grow into that over time. But the cool thing about this project is that we're gonna have brewing operations and packaging operations co-located. Currently, they're separated by East Coast HVAC, on either ends of the building. So there's giant inefficiencies, and there's, probably we have more than enough people currently to in production, from a production perspective, to actually, to actually brew more beer. So from a production perspective, we don't expect to grow the team at all. We expect to grow the team a little bit on the restaurant side. We expect to grow some salespeople, but those people are going to be on the road. They're not going to be parked there. So that's why when we talk about 50 people, it appears that we're going to double the size of the building or double the size of the operation. But in reality, we're actually increasing the size of the equipment, which means that's more efficient. It takes the same amount of people to brew double the amount of beer as it does now. Same thing with packaging. So we wouldn't be doing this if it was if we had to grow the team double in order to accomplish this. We want to make sure that we're capturing those efficiencies. So we expect to see, the same amount of people parking there from an employee perspective, a smidge more on the weekends for, restaurant, hospitality, et cetera. But that's offset by the people that work in production that go home. So, we're looking at this like, there's ample parking, probably too much.
Thank you for that answer. I do hope you press the limits and get so many people in here because you're so popular and you really do grow. But
As long as everybody's comfortable.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. But we got to do it right. Just out of curiosity, has there been any consideration, or would you ever consider keeping the brewery you have now for the excess capacity? It's just a question. That's all. I don't need an answer for it, but I know a lot of people like your beer. So that's the reason why I'm asking, so.
I'll answer you if you want. We definitely talked about it. The problem is that that would, again, require a lot more people, and we can be more efficient doing this project, and keep people co-located, happier, more engaged. Our focus, Harold and my focus is 100% on the customer experience and the customer's experience when they buy the beer on the shelf. So if we can accomplish that, and maintain the level of quality that we have now going into this new facility, from our perspective, it's a slam dunk. If we try to continue to hold the existing facility together with duct tape and super glue, it costs a lot more money, it gets a lot more difficult. It's not necessarily off the table, but I can't imagine that we do it.
I'm just going to ask on the accessory use building. I assume it's going to be for this brewery.
We think in the short term, we're not gonna have a choice but to lease it, but it's gonna be, the tenant in that building would be under our control. Obviously, we wanna make sure that we can keep that building in a condition where we can use it in the future. Unfortunately, we can't immediately use it. I know the board is interested in us taking the existing building down now. Really, the only way that we can afford to, continue to, or afford to erect the building there in the first place is likely to lease it out in the short term. In order to be able to, have some revenue come in to, continue to grow and then eventually move into that building with storage or what have you.
I applaud you for taking down the building. I think that's the best idea. I just want to make sure we don't violate our ordinances concerning accessory uses. So please work with the planner on that to make sure we get it right. All right, does anyone have any questions on the accessory use? Okay, and I guess there's one other thing. There's not enough land here to do a subdivision. What I don't want to create is another business that goes in there, and then they say, well, we want to buy buy you out, and then you come in and ask for a variance. I'm trying to stay away from that because you don't have enough land to do both.
Yeah, that was discussed at the ZBA, so that was the intent, and that's why they granted the variances.
Okay, so I don't know what variances you got.
They're listed.
They're listed on the.
I know there was, I just can't remember, they granted you a variance for that building?
They granted variance for the building
Okay.
as well, so.
What did they grant you on?
They granted 10 variances and they are listed on page.
The cover sheet.
Oh, the cover sheet, right in the cover sheet.
Cover sheet.
Yeah, on the lower right hand corner, variances granted on 11/15/2021.
All right, I'll get those later. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. Do you guys do periodic testing of the water that's coming out of those pipes? To see what kind of contaminants are possibly coming out, or do you have somebody else do it?
What pipes, Paul?
The drain pipes that, run under the road, wind up going into the river.
Paul, I think he already answered that question, that there's no testing that comes out of there, that it's just stormwater that hits the building, hits the parking lots, goes into the storm drainage, and then eventually goes into the swales, and then into the small stream, then the small stream down to the river.
Right, but I'm saying is that there's potential contaminants that are going in, I would think there'd be some type of filtration devices or something in place to keep that from getting into the river.
So there, and Paul, if you want, I'd be happy to go over these plans with you. I know you came in today and I showed you the plans, but I'd be happy to sit down and show you what they're proposing to do. But just so you know that today, what's happening today is the water is coming down Shattuck Way, either, in sheet flow or in roadside swales, eventually some of it entering this wetland. It's going through a 12-inch culvert, through a system of drainage ditches and pipes and wetlands, and discharging into the river. Ultimately, and when this site is paved over and built over, all the water that they're generating is gonna be pre-treated before it's discharged into the wetlands. So you can have the assurance that any water that they put into that wetland is gonna be clean, cleaned water. So in
And
theory.
not contaminated.
What's that?
And not contaminated.
And not contaminated, yeah. So in theory, the water coming out of there's only one pipe, I believe, leaving the site. I think it's a 12-inch concrete pipe, isn't it?
That's correct.
In theory, the water coming out of that 12-inch concrete pipe will be as clean in a year or whenever, after this thing is built, than it is today. Because they will clean all the storm water on their site with their own drainage systems.
Paul, the beauty of this business that I can see is that it's all organic material. There is nothing there that is going to hurt, that I'm aware of. I don't think they're adding any chemicals to it. It's hops, it's brewers, it's, you said the different grains you use for the different beers. The worst case that could happen, it falls off the truck onto the ground and it's already depleted. It's like tea. If you take tea, you put it in hot water, you basically get the tanning out of the tea and the flavor. Well, the materials, the grains that they're using is completely flushed out. And the only thing that's left is the fiber. And the only thing that's good for the fiber, as they said, is to feed animals, because they can break it down, or it would be for composting. I guess that's the only other thing you can do.
Now, what I'm saying is, let's say there's a fuel oil truck
Yeah,
that winds up dumping its load.
and let me just, if I can, the fuel oil truck can spill on Shattuck, it can spill on Patterson, it can spill anywhere. What I will say is that every site today, we, as designers and as reviewers, there is a higher threshold of what it was years ago. And I can guarantee you that we have a sea of pavement at the Fox Run Mall, that there is no owner there every day maintaining it and making sure that when there's someone changing their oil in the parking lot in the back corner, that they're not just over a catch basin. That's not gonna happen here, but it could happen elsewhere. That this site, and it's no different than the site next door with the medical office, where they're owner occupied, they're invested in the town, they're invested in their property, that they're gonna do the best they can. It doesn't say that one of their patrons may blow a fuel oil line and still gas all over the parking lot and into the wetland, well, guess what? There's an automatic response, and DES is notified, and there's a whole cleanup process. But that's not what's gonna happen on this site or any other site that's approved to this board on, there are fail-safes in place.
All right, I'm gonna move on here. We've reviewed the plan, and John,
Chris.
oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
Question on your setbacks that you have listed on the front. In particular, I'm interested in the south entrance. It appears the access way is within about 7 or 8 feet from the side setback. Do you have a side setback limit?
So you can put a driveway through the side yard setback to the parking, so we can setback, the driveway in particular, we also have a setback for the parking.
Mr. Chairman, do you concur with that?
I'm sorry, Chris, I was reading the ordinances, what did you say? I apologize.
So the question Chris had brought up, can we put a driveway through the side yard setback? And my understanding is the answer to that is yes, because it's just the access to the point, to the parcel. And then I think one of the variances we have is for the setback from the parking to the property.
I understand the parking, but we're accustomed to not have any access to a property comes in, obviously, accesses have to cross perpendicular across the setback. But when you have a property, that has a side setback, your roadways and your construction needs to be set back from the side there.
You're not supposed to be in the setback,
Yep.
even with pavement.
Now, this is a matter of being on one on top of another. You don't indicate what the distance is to the north entrance of the next property. I'm sure there's plenty of room because there is drainage swales and other things, but those drainage swales and the slope lines are within fractions, or, 8 feet, because they start sloping to those particular areas on that property, and that's not shown. For us to see that you indeed have,
Yeah, we'll go to the grading plan, we have all that stuff.
I see, that you have that there, that you have pavement, in the side setback,
Yeah,
all the way,
on this whole thing.
that is not allowed.
We got a variance for that, or setback for it here.
I didn't see it on the front, if it's there, that's fine on it, and I'd be highly surprised that, how can you have two driveway entrances possible within a few feet of each other?
Chris, I can't hear, you have to take your mask off, please.
My point is, we have always expected access ways to properties to be outside the side setback.
I think the way we have it written up is that the curb cuts can cut across, cut through the setback. Obviously, you gotta be able to get on your property. But you can't use, coming in, as Chris is saying, on the side setback, you're supposed to be, in other words, you can't use that as part of a paved area. You can come through the front, you can come through the side, there's a whole different way, whichever way you wanna do it, but going down the entire length of the side property is not permitted the way we intended it to, and I think it reads that way too. You can't use it as a thoroughfare, you might say, almost as a road to get in there and then to go in. I'm not sure if you can meet the side setbacks or not, but Chris is right.
Yeah, let me look at,
You may be able to move things over, or.
well, let me look and see what we had actually had on the ZBA exhibit.
Yep.
And I think we had addressed that at that point, but.
I'd be highly surprised if they would grant something like this, and if so, if they were even aware, because this is causing hardship, and it's not a hardship because it's easily rectifiable by taking out a few front parking spots and moving the entire entrance down from 10 feet from the edge of the property to 30 feet from the edge of the property.
We'll look at it. We'll look at it.
You know, it's just overbuilt. The side setbacks is one of the few areas where we have for landscaping or drainage. And with pavement within less than 10 feet from the side, where's your snow gonna go? It's gonna go across onto the other property line. That's not kosher into pushing your snow onto somebody else's drainage swale.
Chris, I think they have snow,
They have
behind.
snow pushed into the front into the drainage swale.
No, they can push it to the back, it shows it there on page 4, where the snow's gonna go.
I'm looking on page 4 on it, yes, it shows it to the back, and it also shows it toward the front, so I'm not gonna get into it here, because I think we're just looking for enough to do a acceptance of enough information to review a plan. But there's some issues as where that snow is going, because snow is untreated runoff from paved area that cannot go into the Shattuck Way drainage swale without pre-treatment, unless you're gonna treat all of that area along Shattuck Way, and I don't think you wanna do that, I know you don't.
Well, we wanted to. That's what originally.
Sure, but that boosts your treatment, quantities up significantly.
You're not wrong. So that's the plan we're gonna provide to John for Concom as well. That show what we were talking about.
Well, we would like to.
So Chris's question was, let me take a look at that and see what we actually have done for that. I'll find out. If we have to modify that section, we'll let you know.
All right. I just wanna know what Concom's gonna be doing, what you're gonna be asking them, and make sure this board is in line, because as far as I know, they make a recommendation to us.
Yeah, so,
And then we look at the whole package, and so we don't wanna be left in the dark as far as what we're going with.
Well, you may be there. We'll talk about that later.
I may be there.
so very
Well,
specific.
this board may be there. We'll talk about that later.
Oh, okay.
What we are submitting to the zoning board, I'm sorry, to the Conservation Commission is a minimum expedited wetlands permit for impact slow wetland for section of the drainage. That's it. What you asked us to do at the beginning of the meeting was provide John with the alternative grading plan that we had, which shows the impacts, which we will do. Whether you guys want us to go to Concom and talk about that or not, that's totally up to you.
I think it's a great idea, I think we should do that.
Then we will.
I think you're proposing a, yeah, okay. All right.
I'm suggesting.
All right, anyone else? Do I wanna move on? Is this is now between the board, and if the board has any more questions of the applicant, and just, what we have to do is this plan enough to move forward for public hearings? Or do you wanna see more? That's the question. Is this substantially complete enough, or you think that we could come to a determination, and possibly either approve or deny based on what's given us?
I make a motion that we accept the plan as substantially complete to allow investigation for all aspects of the ordinances.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Peter? All right, any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. See, I have to, Rick, you are voting, you are an alternate, so I just want to make sure, for the record, Rick is voting on this, all right? All right, so the motion passes, and I think it's all but one, approved. I think it's supposed to substantially complete. All right. What's the date we're gonna see, John, on the 28th?
Well, I was gonna suggest the 28th of February, because I wanna make sure that, I have, 26 comments, 25 comments. Eric has a few, and none of mine are huge, if you've read my memo, but it's gonna take some time.
Yeah, no problem.
You're gonna go to Concom on the 10th.
I think the 28th is the best time.
That's what I,
Yeah, February 28th was perfect.
so that's what I was gonna suggest, is you continue to February 28th.
John, it's a month away, and it's like half the time that we have to basically act on this. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. And
But what are we gonna do in 2 weeks before that? I mean, they're going to Concom. You can do whatever you want, I just think that coming back without anything to report is.
well, I understand that, but so if that's the case, then is the motion to, that this is substantially complete, and it was complete enough that you can come back and see us within a shorter period of time, because taking up, we have 65 days, so everyone understands, we have 65 days. If we take up half of it, just to the next meeting, and we run across something that doesn't work, we're gonna be asking you either for extensions, or we're gonna deny it and say, here's the reasons why, you go out there and fix the problem and reapply it later.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
All right.
So So the comments that Altus has already put together, the comments that John has put together, and the comments we just talked about through here, I don't see any of those as significant showstoppers of any kind.
Okay.
We're happy to come back in 2 weeks. We've already drafted responses to both John's comments and Eric's comments. We can do the updates to the drawings as well. But I think if you guys are looking for input from the Conservation Commission from the 10th, that's up to you guys.
Yeah, you're probably right. John, I also want to make sure that the fire chief gets a set of plans and.
I've already reviewed the plan. Yep.
Okay, I
Yep,
just
I
want to.
want to make sure that I did that rather than.
That's perfect. That's where we want to operate. Chris?
So your meetings in February are when? You have a meeting on the 14th? Which apparently is Valentine's Day according to my calendar.
It is.
And the 28th.
I don't think we should meet on the 14th.
Well, it doesn't matter to me, I'm married.
So am I. I don't think I want to meet on the
You wanna stay
14th.
there?
How about the 14th?
What's that?
How about the 14th?
Fine with me. So,
I mean, we can come back on the 14th if you guys like and report what the Concom had said, if that's helpful.
John, when do we go? Chris, are you going to say the 28th?
I wasn't gonna say anything.
I thought you were going to say something.
Any
No,
more
I have-
time,
I have
Dennis?
other points.
All right, I'm all right with the 28th as long as the applicant is okay, understanding that if we hit something, that you grant us a waiver to continue to go beyond the 65-day.
It's in our best interest to help you guys help us.
can I interrupt you? Maybe it's now time to discuss another a joint meeting with the, well, let me just say one thing, and this is, we're taking this out of order. But, we have a meeting that I'm trying to pull off, I'm gonna ask you to attend with the Conservation Commission on the 10th of February. DOT, as you know, is proposing to build a highway garage at the old drive movie theater. They don't have to go through our process, but they do it as a courtesy. And, they've warned me, or they've told me in no uncertain terms, they're gonna come here once, so one meeting. So they have to come to the Conservation Commission because there's wetland permits, and obviously the planning board would like to see the plans. So what I was gonna suggest is that the Conservation Commission already has a meeting on the 10th. I've asked Jane Hislop if she would be willing to have a joint, not a joint meeting, but a meeting with both the planning board and the Conservation Commission to review this project. So maybe, I don't know if you wanna take things out of change or alter your schedule, but we could also have a meeting on the 10th and then the 21st, which would be the third Monday of the month, which might give you a little bit more, which would give us enough time and you enough time. Or do we wanna just stick with the original schedule?
Well, to go on the 10th was probably a good idea. We don't have to do the 14th.
And then do the 21st?
The 20th, President's Day is 21st.
Okay, so I guess we'll do the 28th then. We probably shouldn't do it much.
So
So, if I may, first I'm hearing about the drive-in site. Well, I don't know if you want any looking at it, but if they're coming here once, it's incumbent upon them to get plans to all the board members beforehand.
They're only gonna give us one set of plans.
I will get plans, yes, we'll talk about that later, but, so, I guess that meeting doesn't have any bearing, because I didn't realize that the 21st was President's Day.
28th, that's school vacation week, and I'm on probably, if, not that it has any bearing on anything.
It's our hope that before the 28th, that Altus will have revised plans, as well as John, that we get an okay letter before we come to the 28th, so if there's anything at that meeting, Dennis, I don't expect to have any substantive changes unless something wonderful happens between now and February 10th, from what you guys are looking at right now.
Can I ask you and the owners, is it, we've become used to having Eric at our side. Is your expectation you're gonna walk away on the 28th with approval, or do you think is it reasonable for us to say, we'll continue this to the 28th, but knowing Eric is not here, we're probably not gonna be in a position to approve it, and it will go into early March. Is that a reasonable thing?
Well, no, I think we can get approval on the 28th. I don't think the comments that Eric has had and yours right now are any of those real showstoppers. So if we can get Altus to respond, and John, you respond with the review comments that pretty much give us an okay letter, I don't see any reason why you guys couldn't approve on the 28th.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Why is that?
As John said, we're used to having our technical expert here with us to answer any questions that may come up while we're in public hearing. Okay, so I just wanna make sure that, I'm trying to move this along for you, but it's, John, the only other thing to think of is if you change the date on the, instead of the 14th, we meet on the 17th or something like that in February. But I'm not sure if the other board members wanna do that. We start moving things out of line like that.
Eric, when do you leave for vacation?
That's Saturday, the 26th or something?
Yep, that's the 26th.
Would anybody have available, oh no, would anybody have available 24th?
What day of the week is that?
What's the time on the 10th?
What?
Time on the 10th?
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
Don't know yet for sure.
I think 6:30, Bob?
6:30.
I think, yeah.
Jane
Is
can't
that for
make it.
sure?
No.
Jane can't make it before.
He's
6:30.
trying to do it for 6:30.
You put these times in the paper?
You sure? No.
These will be posted.
The agenda will be posted, it will not be in the newspaper. Just,
It will be on the town website though.
it'll be on the town's website.
And
Once the public hearing notice is published the very first time, this board will make a motion to continue the application. That is your notice of when the meeting is. It will not reappear in the newspaper.
So, John, since we have to post the 10th,
We don't have to post. We have to put the agenda up, but,
no, what I'm saying, since we are here now, we have to say the date certain, when
Yes.
we're gonna meet next. My understanding is we're meeting on the 10th. Is that for sure?
Jane said she's available on the 10th, yes, as did other members of the commission.
All right, so
So-
if that's the case, where we move the meeting to the 10th, and we're gonna have, it is a joint meeting with, and I know the RSA will allow that. And they won't have all the answers then, but then we could possibly be from there go to the, so we don't wanna meet Valentine's Day, so it would be either, the 17th or the 24th is what I'm recommending.
Well, the problem with the 17th is if we go to the 10th for a Concom meeting, Eric is gonna need the plans at least a week to 2 weeks ahead of time. 3 weeks.
please.
All right.
3 weeks.
All right, we're gonna go to the 28th then.
They need as much
We'll
time.
go to the 28th, but if the board does not feel comfortable without having, if there's some technical questions to come up that we cannot get resolved, we're gonna continue the hearing into March. That's the best I can do for you.
So the board would like to see my letter a week before the meeting.
I understand. So
So
we're
we
hoping,
need 2 weeks.
yeah, we're good with
All
that.
right, so John, is the 10th technically a public hearing? And the board is meeting, it's just gonna be a public
It's
meeting.
it's an informational meeting with a governmental agency.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
all. it is.
All right.
It's a meeting with these guys, but that's really a conservation commission. So it's not a public.
All right, so we're gonna move you then to the 28th of February public hearing. All right, hopefully, and then on the 10th, we'll see you on the 10th as well with the Conservation Commission for the board members that can make it. That good? I'm not hearing or seeing anything. Is the 10th good for the Conservation Commission?
We're good with the 10th.
You're good with
no
that,
problem.
and you're good with the 28th with the planning board.
And the 28th, pleasure of the board, we're happy to be here.
John, are we gonna, we have enough time with DOT to answer any questions? Because I'd like to make sure we get the word out. Do we wanna put other people, other items on the agenda? Because that could be, I'm not sure how many people are gonna wanna be here in the town.
Put it on the 10th?
Yeah.
That meeting is happening. I mean, the Conservation Commission meeting is happening, the joint meeting may not happen. Right? We'll have to decide, we'll have to discuss that after this meeting, but, or after they leave, but,
No, I'm talking about, we are meeting that night because we're meeting with DOT that night.
I haven't set it up yet, I'm waiting for you, I haven't asked DOT to come on the 10th because I wanted to hear what you.
Oh, yeah, I'm
all
okay with the
said.
10th, yes.
If the board says they're agreeable to the 10th, then I'm gonna set it up with DOT and tell them to be there. So how much time they give us is anyone's guess, but, you know, hopefully they'll at least listen to the comments that we have. And I will make plans, for both you and the Conservation
dates be in the local papers?
No. So, Paul, we're talking about a couple of different things. I believe this board is gonna continue this application to
The 28th.
Monday, February 28th, it'll be at 6 o'clock, just like tonight. That's your notice of this meeting. Any other meetings that you, that the town has are always on the town's website or posted on the bulletin board in front of the town hall. But this one will be, I believe it's gonna be continued to February 28th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, so I need a motion to continue this to February 28th.
So moved.
Is there a second? Pete, Chris, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Can I have some discussion?
Yeah, oh,
Okay. So, come in on the 28th, just to let you know, there are some issues that I've heard. Chairman, myself, and I know you've done a lot of work on the drainage as far as the Shattuck Way versus on-site versus the region. There's a lot of information that Eric needs because his letter is lacking details in order to do a lot of calculations. He needs time to do that, and so.
We're really not expecting Eric to do any calculations.
he just checks them.
He just checks.
I review.
Okay, okay. So, and there are also parking issues to resolve that are, I think, pretty significant according to the chairman. I have some issues on the parking lot. I haven't gone into all the difference between lack of curbing, level curbing, slope curbing, vertical granite curbing. This is something we're not getting into here, but these can have a significant impact on how snow flow goes off.
So just so you know, the curbing that we have here is all predicated on doing exactly that, dealing with stormwater and with snow removal as well.
But I think one of the problems that was already identified, I think it was by Eric, was that the islands there's a conflict with the curbing and the water flow, am I correct? And
Well-
read his comments.
So does the board, I mean, we did this with Shackford Place, and I think it was pretty productive. Does the board wanna have a meeting on the, second Monday of the month and do a work session only?
John, that's Valentine's Day. The board does not want to meet on Valentine's Day. If you want to meet on that 17th, which is a Thursday, I think the board would rather do that. At least-
John, I know a good divorce attorney if you wanna meet that night.
I can't afford it.
So, John, are you suggesting, like, go through these comments and then come back and have a conversation on the
I just,
17th?
I know that you guys are on a fast, I know that you wanna get this approved, and we don't wanna see you anymore either, but we also wanna make sure we do this right, so what I was gonna suggest is, I don't want Chris showing up or any other board members
I'd be
coming
happy to come on the 17th.
on the 28th and just say, here's a whole laundry list of
No, no,
issues.
I'd
That's why I
love to.
thought if we could have a work session,
Yeah,
I think
you know,
I think that's a great idea.
I just don't know when that would be.
Thursday, the 17th?
Sadly, I have a conflict.
Okay, what about the 21st? That's President's Day. Is Town Hall closed on President's
Yes.
Day? Yes?
What about the 24th, even though that's only a few days?
Good. But then they're gonna have no time for the 28th. The 17th would probably be the best time to do that. Is everyone good with the 17th? That's a Thursday. The planner works that day.
I'm not here.
But he's not.
You're not here.
I just told you I have a conflict that night. I'm sure, I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, I have a meeting on the 17th.
Where's this gonna be posted, Judge?
Hang in there, Paul.
Hang in there. You're gonna get it all before you leave.
16th.
What about the 16th?
I'm available the 16th.
I'm good. I'm not sure what the board.
Wednesday the 16th. Is anybody available for that?
I can see if I can arrange it.
It's a work session. Let's do Wednesday the 16th. Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Rick, is it 6 o'clock? Is that good?
I'm having a kid at some point, so I don't know.
Can you wait till the 17th?
Listen, yeah, tell them to hold off.
We're giving you Valentine's Day off, and we need a couple more days.
Ben, whatever you need.
It's gonna be a Friday, so I don't miss work already, so we're locked into Friday. Could be any Friday.
Well, you can bring it here if it's quiet.
So the 16th?
So I guess someone made a motion to continue the public hearing
The
until
28th.
the 28th. And we don't need a motion, but Paul, I just wanna make sure, Paul, you know, this board is gonna have a work session on Wednesday the 16th. And it won't be a public hearing, so Dennis may or may not let you speak, but you can certainly listen to what the board has to say.
Okay, the 16th of
February.
Of February. And there will be an agenda posted on the town's website and on the bulletin board out.
Is that at 6 or earlier?
What?
Is that at 6 or earlier?
I thought it was probably 6.
Yeah.
And Eric, are you available on that night?
The 16th, yes.
Good.
You want me at the 10th?
Well, just hang in there.
I don't think so. Maybe, I'm not sure. Hang on.
Might be the wetland issue.
Yeah.
I think you're free to leave unless you wanna.
Just want to clarify, 10th is the Conservation Commission meeting,
Yep,
16th, we're gonna have a workshop,
and the next,
28th, we'll have the next public hearing.
that's the next public hearing.
And so what we'll do is we'll try to address, if Chris or anyone else has any other written comments, if they can give them to John, you can send them to us. We've got notes here, I just wanna make sure that we have all the same comments.
The purpose of this meeting on the 16th is if anyone has any more things that they wanna bring up as an issue, they can do it then, they get it done.
Yep.
Okay?
That as well as the fact that we can try to address what you guys have already asked.
Yeah, and if there's something that's I'd rather have everything done, business done here versus having stuff sent in individual, we don't know what's going on. The rest of the board doesn't.
So we won't issue new plans or anything else for the 16th, we will bring additional information for you at that meeting for discussion.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Good, Chris?
Yeah.
And just so the board knows,
Afterwards.
they have a date with the Conservation Commission on the 10th to talk about the landscaping plan and to talk about the dredge and fill permit. And I hope you're gonna be there because of this DOT issue, so,
Are these dates gonna be posted in the town, are these dates gonna be posted in the town hall?
yes, so just so you know, we're having a Conservation Commission meeting on the 10th to review the landscaping and the dredge and fill permit, the wetland permit.
Yeah.
We're having a work session on February 16th, which is a Wednesday, at 6 o'clock. And this public hearing was continued to Monday, February 28th, also at 6 o'clock. And yes, those notices will be posted on the bulletin board and on the town's website,
Thank you.
but not in the newspaper.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have it all, right, February, busy month.
Mr. Chairman, can I make some comment?
No,
Okay.
we're going home tonight. Go
Can I
ahead.
take a very quick recess?
Yeah, let's take a quick recess and then I take your comments, how's that, Chris?
First time.
I'm gonna put it in the newspaper, I'm gonna get us a plane full of banner over his house. Yeah.
Are you doing any testing?
Shut up, would you?
Sorry.
Were you going on vacation?
Crested Butte.
Where is it?
Crested Butte?
Was it a big mountain?
Yeah.
Up in Canada?
Yeah, Colorado,
On Sunset Ridge?
near Gunnison.
You ever been?
Yeah, I've been there a few times. I've stayed there only once, but I've been there in the summer. My sister-in-law used to live in Gunnison.
Oh, nice.
trying to reduce that house down. Matter of fact, you've kept him employed.
Who?
He's, an heir to Estwing.
Ashwood?
Yeah.
Oh, the hammer? Really?
Yeah.
Must be kind of cool, huh?
Yeah. He's a trust fund. Good to have low friends in high places.
All right.
So is Eric keeping busy?
Yeah, Eric's busy.
Yeah. Tired?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
How's your garage going?
Just backfilling right now.
Going on inspections?
No, I actually paid for independent.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
They'll approve that?
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah, I know, having Alex Ross inspect my structure.
What are you doing those guys?
I don't know where that is. But I've caused such a mess in the neighborhood. Well, no, because the utility pole that serves my house is a backyard pole that goes through Louisiana's yard, serves Brian's house and mine. Eversource looked at it in August and said, oh yeah, no problem. They came back and said, oh, we can't do that. So we have to remove that pole, which is behind my garage on their property, run new primary down Lawrence Street from Kensington, run a whole new set of poles down Kensington, and then they're going underground to Brian's house, my house.
So they're gonna wrap up his yard?
And rip up his yard.
Beautiful lawn you just planted? And so what?
All right, we gotta continue on here, I wanna get out of here before midnight.
So,
I think we're doing good. Go ahead, John.
so just, I know I was kind of crazy talking about all these dates, but, I just did wanna, I do wanna explain to you what's going on with DOT and why we're where we are. For those of you who don't know, any state agency, even a town agency, doesn't have to, they're not obligated to come to the board, for approvals, but they generally come, most state agencies and most town, projects go through some level of review at a planning board. In this particular project, they have told me that they will come one time, and they wanna meet the Conservation Commission and the planning board jointly. So we have sort of one shot at looking at this project. Whether or not they even listen to any of our feedback is anyone's guess. But, I hope that you guys can all come to the meeting on the 10th. Because, and I'll get you the plans as soon as possible, but, you know, if you have input, I hope the state listens to any comments you may have.
It's non-binding, so they can say, oh, thank you, at the end of it.
And I hope they don't. My experience has not been this. My experience usually is that they're willing to come and listen. You know, the fact that they only want to do one meeting is a little odd. It's very kind of odd. And I don't really like asking you to go to a conservation commission meeting, but it seemed like the best.
That's a good idea. You got a good idea. I think it's a good idea. There's nothing wrong with it.
I just wish they would have come to two separate meetings, but whatever. And I hope they do listen to any comments we have. So hopefully that'll be a productive meeting, and,
John, I think you should listen to the joint meeting, not just a conscom meeting, because about that particular
yes.
issue.
Yep, I will.
So the other thing I think would be good to do is put it out on the Newington e-letter, e-news that goes out.
Yeah.
And make sure it's a goal so people see it and say, we get one shot at this. And we don't even, it's nothing binding, just explain to people just like you did to us now.
Yeah.
So that people do come here and understand that. I think one of the things I talked about with John, I think maybe with Chris or Rick or somebody, I think it was somebody else, is that they're coming in using up a part of some of the best land we have left in Newington. We've asked them not to, we've asked them to go onto P's, we've done this verbally. I think what we need to do is protect ourselves, but we also listed it for workforce housing. And as an overlay, and, they just said, no, we're just going to ignore you, do what we wanna do, we're not going to do that. And I wish, Bob, I almost wish the selectmen would join in with us on that, because, but it doesn't really matter, the bottom line is, I asked John to put a letter together explaining that we've tried, and I want to get on record that we've tried, the state requires us to do these things, and the state keeps coming in and taking our land. And it's, it first started out with peas, we had mobile home park that was out there, and the active duty was there, we wanted, after they left, we wanted to keep it as that, they said no. We then had another location on peas, which is down by the water tank, we said, and again, the PDA said, not gonna happen, and then again, our attorney said, we can't do anything on, anything that land we don't control. And then we identified this lot, and again, here they are buying it, developing it, and the state and our federal agencies taking it. So, I just want this to be a matter of record, that we're gonna give to them. I think we should send it to the DOT commissioner, Sheehan, and make sure that they truly get the message that there's alternative sites that the state owns, currently owns, is going unused, literally on top of the hill, a quarter mile away, that they can go to. And what they're doing, they're taking up capacity of the town, and they're just ignoring the land that they already own. So, I think, John, if we put something like that together, and we need to, it's basically pleading our case. If nothing more, I wanna get it on record, it's pleading our case if we ever get taken to task, by somebody who's trying to put in housing and say we're not being fair.
So the Governor's Housing Council, right?
Was that?
The Governor's Fast Track Housing Council.
Right. Yeah, we should send a letter to them too.
Yeah.
So whatever happens, so anyways, John, if we can just do that?
Yep.
Put something like that together, again, you have the annual report, you got that done, right?
Yep.
All right. So that being the case, is there anything else, John?
Well, Eric asked.
We're not done, we still got
No,
other things to do.
Eric asked, well, we still have a zoning public hearing tonight, which is your last zoning public hearing. But, you asked if Eric should attend the 10th. My vote would be, if he's available, I think it would be helpful, because he has a set of eyes, and if we talk about the drainage along Shetland Way.
Come on, that's
Okay.
fine, yeah.
I mean, just,
John, that'll probably come out of the planning board budget, now it won't be an offset, it'll come out of our budget anyways, but, it's gonna be,
good.
we're not getting reimbursed for it.
So that's 6:30.
Be
Eric.
kind to us, or. Always. Always.
But,
Something that, yeah, I'm just saying, Eric just lost one of his top people, Dennis, Moulton, I'm gonna mess here, but Dennis Moulton's retired, and a great guy, and he's gonna be a huge gap to fill. So hopefully we can fill that soon,
Well, we have an entry level, and her shoes are not filling with Dennis yet, but she's a good start.
Good. As long as she's trainable, what I always say about new people, how they train them. Chris, you had something?
No, I'm not trying to. That wasn't your question?
No, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I want to comment on the DOT. Now, I'm fine with it any date that you want on it. There's some issues on it. I understand, having worked with the DOT for a decade and a half on the Spalding Turnpike, they can be forthcoming and they can be arrogant, okay? And they may want to come as a courtesy and just drop off and walk out not paying attention, but there's some significant issues. We need to let them know that we have some issues, and them finding out on the spot and then blowing them off, it's not gonna go. One is the wetlands, and those go beyond, they can blow us off, but they have to go through DES to do that, and I'm sure they have, but our Concom ought to be on top of that. Okay, so we need to know, we need to address the serious wetlands, expansive wetlands are up. Secondly, this is a historic graveyard site. We need the Historic District Commission notified and willing to at least provide comments that this is the date, we don't have any say. So we need to indicate this is significant. It's in our master plan. It is the treatment. We need to know how they're gonna treat it, identify it, treat it, or whatever, or if they're just gonna ignore it and bury it deeper. Okay.
You said there's a cemetery up there?
Yes, it's graveyard. It's graveyard. It's one of the 10 identified graveyards in our area.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You know, as a matter of coordination with the historic district, which seems to be a current topic, we need to give them a formal notification, John. A letter that that this is a development, there's a known grave site, we need their input and response, there's a meeting before the 10th, and there is a meeting and they are invited to participate on this aspect. That's my suggestion.
So just a couple of things with that. Part of the wetlands permitting process is that NHB and DHR are notified, and those types of things should pop up if it's known on a statewide basis. And they can't do work within a certain distance of that, the 25 feet. But one thing that you might want to do, and I don't know anything about this project, that is request and require public access to that, so that.
The graveyard?
Yeah,
That's by law, that's a law.
yeah, but make sure that it,
They know that.
that they know it and that they make it usable. There's a difference between having it by law and then having it not function. So make sure that it happens.
What's interesting is the town is responsible for maintaining the graveyards and having access, to we have a right by law to get.
Yeah.
So these are the kind
But
of
if
things
they
we
make it
need
really
to
difficult.
identify. We need to know about it, but we need to store it. If we're gonna have any kind of rapport with the HTCs we're trying to develop, we need to notify them, tell them, figure out how you're gonna do it on short notice, because this is coming, and this is your responsibility. If you don't show up, we'll take it from here, but I just.
What's interesting though, and this comes in my experience in dealing with the state and New Hampshire DHR, we had a couple of graveyards that were being impacted by Eversource, and it did not fall under New Hampshire DHR. It was weird, and I thought it was, but that's what was stated, and it falls under a different.
Sure, maybe,
I'm not sure what it is, all I know is that I was very surprised to see that, but still think they should be notified.
yeah, and my only point is, we need to be able to react and tell them, we need answers at this meeting. We need to have the right plan of attack, doesn't have to be done, but our historic district commissions to notify, and they need to get answers. So, the,
Is that incorrect, that's wrong?
no, this has to do with they have promised, and there is a need for a regional bike, plan in combination with the replacement of the General Sullivan Bridge, is primarily for pedestrians and bicycle access. And that include, and this is the only crossing point, 26 miles between Maine and the bridge of 108 on the Exeter River. So from the standpoint, I believe that it would be, we at least need to contact the Rockingham Planning Commission, particularly transportation planners, and probably Sabre through them, the Seacoast Regional Bike Access. Because there's a national bike route going from Maine to Florida that is being developed through Portsmouth on the rail line. They are gonna need ways for drivers or bikers to go, I'm talking about professional bikers, recreational bikers, to go from inland all the way to that bike route and go south. And that's a long-term process. But from the standpoint, there is a bike route going through Portsmouth, through Newington, as you know, that currently go up. It is pretty narrow on there, and we have no interest in widening our roads for pedestrian biking, only to see traffic increase 10 to 15 miles per hour. So this is an alternate and actually a short path route for them to get to the trade port or along the old railroad route, and it needs to be brought out. The DOT is committed or aware of this, they need to be doing something, but they need to identify some answers that they have a reasonable, good size access through their property from Mitchell Lane down here, all the way up to Shattuck Way. And we need to let them know that we're interested in that, and so is the region interested in that. So I think we need to contact RTC. I have an ideal place to do that is the upcoming TAC meeting. So that's one thing.
So are you
I
volunteering?
believe when we were negotiating with DOT with the Spalding, that we were trying to get the commuters to come across the bridge and go straight into Pease down what was goes to southbound lane, which is this access way, and to come out on, Woodbury, and I believe through that negotiation, were you on the board at that time?
I was
That was an agreed,
yes, they agreed to that.
yeah,
We need to see.
but we
that.
haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
it's
not
on
just
the
us.
drawing, isn't it?
The
It's on the drawing.
there's a couple, experts, I looked at the drawing. There's a couple little mentions to that on, I think needs to be looked at, with somebody with a little more expertise, such as the RPC member, Scott, and, just to provide a feedback. You know, from the standpoint of, I think this is a big enough impact, and this is a time where they need to know it's not just Newington, but this is a regional impact that needs to be addressed.
Chris, you're talking about bike path across their property to look the hill.
Alongside, yeah,
Okay, I think they put that in, but they can't be responsible for properties beyond them.
the,
They own everything.
yeah, they own everything there, including the right-of-way around Woodbury Avenue and other things. I think the region needs to understand what's the plan that is a sizable, not just cut through Newington, cut down this, Mitchell Lane, or whatever they're gonna call it, the extension of that street on there. This is gonna be a major, biking, recreation and professional transit type situation. And it's gonna be set in stone when they build their process. So we may not get an answer, may not be the advocates for it, but at least it's just going in under the radar scope of everybody that knew this particular thing. So I think there needs to be some contact there, and they can start to make some, be willing to make
There's an
some.
organization called, Seacoast Bikers.
Saber. Seacoast area
Bike roads.
area,
They carry quite a bit of weight. Would you
Yeah.
contact them and see about,
Yes.
let them make sure that they
and I
know?
will do that through Scott and the RPC, who's one of their principals.
Good. Let's
Yeah.
find out what they say, and anybody else, but I
And
think
can I invite them to the meeting on the tenth?
They'll have to be in here.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do, but the thing is that they have to do it. What we can't do, Chris, and I'm afraid of, they're gonna come in here.
What I'm afraid of is that we wind up saying, we're gonna talk about the region, we need you to develop the whole region even further down, going into Portsmouth. We gotta focus on what we want, what they're doing with that southbound lane, and what we expect to be across there, and then get us to keep going past them. If we get into the whole thing, we're not gonna have time.
I understand. What I'm saying is, what we own, what the impact is from the General Sullivan Bridge, across Mitchell Lane, up the road, and past their property. The reason I'm mentioning the overall, this is a major overall bike route concept, that is the fundamentals are being laid here, and if they get by without addressing it initially or being aware of it, they're probably not gonna address them for it. But we need to get the right people on board so they can put the pressure that we can to do this.
But I think the drawings show that they're putting a bike path in, that's what I'm saying, across their property.
I've looked at it.
And so have
I will show it to Scott and to the RPC and ask them to look at Sabre and say, is this gonna be adequate? And what else do you need to know? That's all I'm saying.
All right, I thought you were saying you wanted to include the other roads as well, like from the bridge all the way up to there and across it and beyond.
Happens, now's the time. They own the area. Right now, that is the opportunity, they own a lot of the property alongside the roads that would be going along there. So now's the time to bring up the idea and bring in the people that have an interest in this regional bike.
You see why I'm saying that we probably should have just had them for one meeting?
Yeah.
I think these can all be done at one meeting, because if they don't like it, they're just come to the meeting and they're gonna stamp it. But at least these issues can be brought up before, saying, we would like you to address the graveyards, the wetlands, the placement of your bike paths within the overall region to show sufficiency. If they come in and say it's sufficient, we're gonna let the Sabre address that, but at least it'll be addressed. how are these bikes gonna get onto Woodbury Avenue as far as the traffic flow? If we have 20 bikers going up the hill, that's our property and going on there, that may be a Newington issue, 'cause that's our road. Not the bridge portion, but that's some of the things. And the other question is, do we need to contact our sewer commission beforehand to address the issue you brought up, Dennis? Is this sewer line gonna be sufficient? Are you gonna back pump up the Mitchell Lane and go into the existing crossing, or are you gonna use the lower one? Is it sufficient for capacity? And I think the expert in that for our is our town solicitor.
Well, what I wanna make sure that the sewer line, if they're going under the highway, they're gonna use that one. If they're gonna use that one, which is not being used right now, but we installed it years ago, and it was only used when the drive-in theater was there. It has been used since then, and it's gonna be 30 years old, unused. Is it still good? They built a whole highway over the top of it. I want them to verify that if they plan on using it, that they can't plan on us fixing it, because they crushed it when they built the highway. So, that would be an incredible cost for the town. What's that, Rick?
They send a camera down.
I know that, but I wanna make sure, but if it also fails in the future, because of something they did, because they weren't careful, they put boulders on top of it, it's not crushed yet, and it could crush, I wanna make sure that we're not on the hook for finding a way to get under that highway. That's the only thing I'm asking, I'm looking for the hook for the town. I wanna move on, because we're gonna be here all night.
That's all I have, but these are 4 agencies that we need to contact and let them know this is happening and get them involved. We're gonna solve all these issues on there, but if we don't tell these agencies, shame on us. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to make a big issue on it, so whatever date, the 10th is fine, do that, but we need to let them know that these 4 agencies need answers.
And I'm not telling you, Chris, I don't want you to think that they may not come back. I mean, all the indications from the emails and the conversations that I've had with them is that it's a one-shot deal. If you say there's a bunch of issues that you want to discuss and you raise, maybe they may say, okay, we'll address them, we'll come back. I don't know. That's not the indication I've gotten, but
Having worked with them, if you let them know that these are issues, they'll come with an answer. I mean, they're gonna, the boss is gonna ask, why didn't you think of that? Especially when you're told, and whether we like the answer or not, is probably not gonna be our choice. But let's do our part and let them know that we've thought of 4 issues, anybody else, anything else? We're bringing our experts in that, so that they're aware of it and can follow up. Because I'm not gonna watch the sewer line for as long as I'm on the planning board, but I know our sewer commission is interested and they're gonna be involved in everything. And they need to know the history and that they had the opportunity to correct it if what you say is true.
Right, I think what we're trying to say is make sure that the sewer commission is aware of that, we don't know the commission of one. So, we need to move on, because we're repeating ourselves here at this point, okay? So you're gonna contact Scott, RQC?
Yep.
And you're gonna contact he's gonna contact the bikers group? Is that correct?
I presume you will.
All right, or you will, okay, but get back with us. And then, John, maybe the best thing to do is do a preemptive strike, tell them here's the concerns that we have.
Yep.
And let them know that these are the things, and maybe get more detail from Chris if you need it, and probably from Rick or whoever you need for the sewer commission. Does that make sense to everybody?
Also, the cemetery is not HDC, it's a cemetery committee that's responsible for that.
That's what I thought. I didn't think it was the HDC. There was a cemetery committee was responsible for it. Yeah, it wasn't the HDC.
So,
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought it was historical. I thought those resources were historical. It's not. I was amazed by that, so. All right, let's move on, because we can't keep going here. But Chris, if anybody has anything, get it to John. Let's see if we get something out, John, and they know exactly some of the concerns we got, okay? We have a public hearing for the zoning minutes. John, you have the zoning minutes?
I do. Does anybody need a copy?
I would like to have a copy if you have it. Yes.
Does anybody need a copy or not? You do? You good, though? Good, you're good? All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, did I go everybody?
Didn't answer.
okay,
He's had a very
So we're gonna go on, we're gonna start with this, and we're gonna start with amendment number 1, and it's a public hearing again.
This is just to remind you, this is the final public hearing. If you don't vote to put these on the warrant for 2022 town meeting, they are not gonna be on.
Thank you, John.
Eric?
Eric?
Good night,
I was
Eric.
actually thanking John, not you.
Okay.
No one wants you.
Hi, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, so, John, why don't you go ahead and talk, and here's the thing I wanna see, what is gonna be on the warrant, as it's written on the warrant? What are we gonna see? Can you please tell us that?
I can't tell you that, because I will write something up and I'll have John Radigan review it. It'll be as brief as it can be, but it'll also have enough, text that it'll explain what the change is. There are some in here that I'm not gonna be able to put the whole section in.
So, John, let's just take the first one. Are we putting in that entire second paragraph? Or the way you have it?
I would suggest that we put in the first sentence.
All right,
But I don't wanna talk about that tonight, because I'll go over this with John Radigan and we'll boil this down to make sure that the question is as succinct as it can be, so the ballot isn't 25 pages long.
so then on the other side of that, we'll have an explanation sheet or sheets that we need to explain these?
Yeah, I'll write it, yeah.
And then
yeah.
people can get them as they come to
Yeah,
the vote?
And it may just be this full text, yeah.
All right,
So, again, we've talked about these ad infinitum, but the first one is all we're doing is adding that if a conditional use permit is part of a subdivision or site plan application being reviewed by the planning board, that you guys will deal with a performance guarantee, not the board of selectmen. That's all that is.
that was pretty straightforward. Just wanna make for the record that everyone understands that there is nobody here from the public tonight, nobody. It's just us, the planning board plus our reporter and the planner.
So, do you wanna make a motion on these individually
Yep.
to move them to town meeting 2022 ballot, the 2022 ballot?
I move that the first one goes to 22 ballot.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Again, no one's here from the public. So, no public comment on this. Any comment from the board members? There being no comment from the board members, I'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Again, Rick, you're voting, as we have to have a full board here. All right.
Okay, amendment number 2, again, very straightforward. This is, in cases where a zoning ordinance or parts thereof may be in conflict with another ordinance or regulation, the more stringent shall apply. Very basic.
I move that goes to the warrant.
Is there a second? Ben, thank you. Any discussion? And again, no one here from the public? No comments? Close the public hearing on this particular issue. And I'm gonna go for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? None. Close the public hearing.
We are on a roll. Amendment number 3, I'm not gonna read the current definition of frontage, because we've read it 100 times, but the new definition of frontage will read, shall mean the distance a lot borders on a class 5 highway or better, or road approved by the planning board. In cases where a property abuts multiple roads as defined herein, the planning board shall determine which portion of the frontage is subject to front setback requirements.
Okay, there's no one here from the public. Is there any discussion from the board or a motion?
I move that goes to the warrant.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Rick. Any discussion again? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? It passes.
Oh, boy. Number 4, I don't know if I wanna read this, I don't know what you guys wanna do. I'm gonna make a recommendation to you as your staff, consultant, that you delay action, that you not act on this year.
Okay, so So before you put that down, I want to say something. I think that we're doing that. I think that when we met with the HDC, I think the consideration from them, and they said they wanted to have to work with us collaboratively on that. And it seems to be a sort of a complex issue on mapping. I concur with that, and I agree with what John just said, based on the information that we have, that we consider tabling. So I'll open up for discussion from anybody. Where did Jim go? Did he go home?
He was
sick.
Dennis, do you have enough information actually for this, about this whole?
Okay, I agree. I think we should probably make sure we get all the information together. The HBC seems to think that they need more time as well, but I think there's not enough information. It was not as clear, straightforward, like if you, well, the rest of them,
But when, from the standpoint, there is some confusion, there are some points. I think the issue that has crossed a number of minds, mine at least, is that how long do they want to talk for? They want to meet once a month for the next year to talk about it? This is an issue that can be resolved. People just sit down and figure out what it is. So I think we need to identify a date after town meeting. Probably would be a good idea. Saying in the month of April, we want to set up a formal meeting working session to readdress the boundaries of the historic properties in town.
the boundaries for the historic parking.
Second?
The boundaries for the historic districts. Two historic districts.
Sure. Good.
Okay.
And from that standpoint, there's a number of issues to resolve. One is, what we're talking about is the local historic district. People aren't looking at the issues. There are two districts. There's a national listing historic district, central district it's called, and then there's the local district. The locals came first. It was set up, the HDC was set up in the 70s. 2 years later, the Central Historic District was established, and then in the latter 70s, the 20 Point Historic District was set up. The local historic, the national historic districts were set up later. They were set up by a joint committee of the planning board, town planner Tom Morgan, with the head of the Historic District Commission, Barbara Field, and the head of the Historic Society and town historian, Barbara Myers. It's a much more involved process. It involves not only local selection and approval, state endorsement and approval, and national acceptance on a historic district. There are two different purposes, okay? Our zoning is interested in the local one, because the local one that applies rules that bring conformity to the historic nature of the history of the property. Entirely different reason for supporting the national historic district. The National Historic District's sole purpose is to provide discount protection from federal absorption of those properties. That's its only, it doesn't say what can be built there or anything of that nature. So I thought they should be the same. But when you take a look at the two districts, local and national, they have entirely different purposes. And if they are different in my mind, that is a good thing. Case in point, the central district, the intention was to maximize the area up there to protect it from being taken by the Air Force by the town at the time. But to expand the runway, which was attempted, and it was a reaction to the ACU's runway incursion that wanted to take the off the end of the runway, another 3,000 and 6,000 feet, which entire, almost all the way out to Fox Point, and to restrict that particular property, and to make the first 1,000 feet, including Ruby's Farm, uninhabitable. So, obviously, the town reacted, the Air Force pushed it back, but that's how the historic listing came about, and why the impetus of those 3 boards came forward. That has nothing to do with zoning, that isn't, and I don't think we need to change that as far as zoning, because our zoning districts addresses what can be done in certain zones. In particular, you want to look at that.
Chris, are you talking about mapping now or zoning? I'm trying to get us on track, because we're working on the mapping on this right now.
But I understand, but the issue on the zoning is the mapping is incorrect. It was laid out, it's the original map for zoning, map for zoning that was done by the Seawell Corporation, who did the original town mapping on the first plans for the town back when it was taken by the Air Force in the 50s and in the 60s. And this map was set up and given to me when I purchased my property in the 80s. It has the original effective date of 1966, and it goes through 1981. There were no more changes after 81 until I came to town in the mid-1800s. And then we stopped making this map. And the reason was we published a master plan in the late 90s, and we went to diagrams by computers in the town.
Can you give John a copy of that, Matt?
This is my own copy, but I will.
Can we get John a copy of that?
Yeah, so we'll do that. But the thing I want to point out here, if you take the Central Historic District, our wording in the ordinance says all the land to the left and right from Nimble Hill Road at the intersection of Little Bay Road goes forward. And everybody assumed that goes all the way out to the Air Base property, now the EDA property. It's not true. This particular mapping does that on the west side, it includes the transfer station, as far as the local mapping. And on the east side, where I live, the boundary goes out not to the PDA property, but it goes out to a line and then follows parallel all the way down, like we were proposing. We proposed 400 feet, this one's about 600 feet. Okay. So it was never the way it is, it was drawn on our computer vision, and is listed in our plan. So what we are identifying provide bounds, that's precedence in the original maps, and it was lost in my mind. So, and I think what I'm getting down to say, and I know that you're getting impatient, Dennis, but from the standpoint, the basis that we went forward of limiting it to the cemetery chain link fence on the west side, and going down with the line, as John proposed, all the way straight forward, extending that all the way from Little Bay Road all the way to the EDA property, has merit. And if you did what Lulu suggested, of going back to the corner that used to be the gravel pit, and that was owned by the PDA, okay, that actually is backtracking 120 degrees to go back, because the actual line of the chain link post goes further than she realizes, goes right out into the edge of the playing field. And to get to that point, it's not just at 90 degrees, it's back 115 degrees back to that point. It's actually almost as short, to go directly forward. The little curve in the notch, which is a defined point, is entirely directly in line with that line. And like, as I was saying, on the other side, a line parallel that limits the extent of the local historic district is in line with what the original was set up in 1966 and carried through 1981. So all I'm saying is that the basis that we have to go into this meeting with them, what we have drawn forward is sound fact, and is entirely different from the National Historic District. It doesn't need to change, because we want all that protection from both sides of the road and into the town forest. And And the National Historic District also already has been approved at the national level to extend all the way to the PBA forest to 69 acres. So that is already contained in it. That does not mean that we have to have a local historic district go all the way out there, because frankly, nothing is intended to be built out there. Just want to give that background. So from the standpoint, I think what we have going forward and what we have proposed, we will listen to I'm going to listen to what they have to say, but I think we have a sound basis to go forward, and we'll listen, and if they have a better compromise, I think we'll be a very sound historical position on what we're doing.
So what is our first meeting in April?
There's a meeting in April?
Yeah. So that we can move this to that meeting?
Well, you don't need to move, you just, all you need to do is make a motion to,
Either pass or.
to pass on.
To go to what or not? I'm gonna make a motion not to move forward. All right, you're second, next floor.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? What are you gonna say, John?
Oh, no.
Any discussion, any more discussion? There being no discussion, we'll call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
All right, amendment number 5. The sole purpose of this is to remove the residential use in the Bloody Point Historic District.
And to insert
Well, it says that in the Bloody Point District, any use permitted in the adjacent office district,
That's right.
subject to the provisions of the Newington Historic Ordinance.
Okay. So-
Whereas right now it says that it's subject to the provisions of, that it's in the single-family R district. And for those of you, I think, with the exception of, I think Rick and Ben, we had a meeting on Monday, the 17th, with the Historic District Commission. And they had asked us, to pass on both of these amendments. One of the things that Chris pointed out, which was very interesting, was that the Toll House was never really a single-family house. It was always an accessory to a business, to a commercial operation. That was like a caretaker's residence at a business, which is already permitted in the office zone. So I think that I'm not putting words in Chris's mouth, but I think Chris would tell you that, and I would agree with Chris, that if you make the zoning amendment change, what was there for the last 200 years could be there for the next 200 years without any kind of zoning relief. A caretaker's residence in a business. It couldn't be, that building couldn't be converted into a single family house.
I move that this proceed to the town warrant.
Is there a second? Okay, for a second, all right, thank you. Okay, sounds like we wanna have some more discussions, I see some reluctance in people's faces. I sat there and looked at this, and I said, is it gonna make a difference this year, or is it gonna make a difference next year, on whether or not this passes in my mind? And in my mind, I said, the master plan says no residential on the other side, except what's already there. We're very clear, I'm just stating in generality, I mean, it says it much more eloquently in our master plan. This property was owned by DOT, nobody ever gave it much consideration. This property was added, I believe, in the mid-70s or early 70s. But the historic district on Nimbleville Road, up by the old town hall, was already, it was in the residential district. And that's the reason why it came over, I believe it came that way when we added Bloody Point, which came later. Oh, it's another district, we'll just do the same uses. I think it's been an oversight on his part during that time, and I know it's definitely not mine, but I did not ever consider that Bloody Point to be anyway is residential. But the way it was technically written, I think that it doesn't make any difference in my mind this year or next year, or even 2 years from now, if we're going that long. And the land's going up for sale. When is it gonna go up for sale? What are they gonna do with it? How are they gonna advertise it? That's what I'm most concerned about. So, I really felt like the HDC had, working with them, we've asked them to come, and that I think we listened to them, I think all of us were on board with remapping this year, and we said, no, all right, we heard what they had to say, I think it made sense. But the use, in my mind, should not be residential. It's near the industrial area, heavy industrial by spray. There's a lot of chemicals over there, I know there's a lot of smells over there, and making it residential, there's actually quite a bit of land there. If you walk that, Bloody Point, there's quite a bit of land, there's quite a few houses that can go in here, if they would develop it and still preserve the old building. So, I guess I'm in favor of doing it this year. I wish the HDC was here tonight, they're not, they didn't want to come to the public hearing. We had a special meeting with them, to consider it, to come, and we asked them to come to that meeting last Monday. And, I guess I'm gonna ask the board to seriously consider sending this to town warrant. But I'd like to hear if anybody has any reluctance or reservations about this, before we move on for the vote. So if you have anything, say so now.
I do, I still don't think you have enough information about this whole thing, about when it was switched to historic district. I don't think you have information.
It was voted on in 1974, wasn't it?
It was, but you don't read the whole thing. It says it's gonna be leased to the town. So I don't know if that voids the whole thing, but it's never leased to the town.
No,
Yes,
that's what people
yes,
voted.
it was leased to the town, and the DOT did not extend the lease.
In 74 it was, 75 it was?
It was then leased to the town by the DOT for a period of 10 years, and the Historic District Commission was interested in extending the lease. It's under the term of Barbara Myers' daughter, Gail Fair, and the state refused to lease it back, to release, extend it. So that was close to 15 years ago.
The other part too that I'm aware of is that according to that lease that DOT gave to the town was that we had to come up with a planned use was recreational. And it was supposed to, I think they wanted to use it for that. It was supposed to submit to DOT, as far as I know, there's no record of that being submitted. None. So there's no plan that I'm aware of that happened, so. I'm just concerned that if DOT were to turn around and put it up for sale, either at the end of this year or even the beginning of next year, they could put it up for sale at the end of this year to sell the following year. And once it's being advertised as residential permitted, it's gonna be very hard to bring that back and undo that, because they're already gonna be going out, and they're probably gonna have people, they're probably gonna be putting chemicals out there for people, or checks to say, hey, what do you think this is worth? What do you think this is gonna be? So, I think we need to send DOT the message of what we're permitting to go in, because they're gonna sell. And I know there's some hopes of it coming to the town. I know the selectmen haven't, basically been comfortable with taking on more historical resources that take up a lot of our town funds. We've got a boat load already up here at the historic district up on top of the hill here. So we take care of it, and we put over $1 million, I think, into the old town hall going back about 10 years. And so now we have the stone school, and the parsonage, we're still trying to get up to date. Library got some more changes, the library has to run their own thing, but they're still, each historic district is still a town facility. So I think we already have a handful, you might say, with Kara, so I guess I'm moving, at least I feel like I'm ready to move on this and vote for this thing, because it's not gonna change my mind this year or next year on the use, not the boundaries. The boundaries, that's a different issue. I want to make sure we understand. I only talk about the use for the Bloody Point district, not the district I'm talking about, Hill Road. Any other questions? Any more comments? Everybody ready to vote?
Was that motion second?
I'd like to make one comment I'll abbreviate. The eloquent words you mentioned from the 1990 master plan that essentially said, as far as zoning east of the Spalding Turnpike, just to paraphrase, the turnpike for new development has to adhere to the zoning use of, that provides the town the lowest property tax rate in the state, and that being no new residential. And that was reinforced just last year when the two-thirds majority of the town voted to strengthen the amendments to both the office and the waterfront and the commercial zone, that there will be no residential in that area. So I think it continues to be well supported, as mentioned in the master plan. We are simply maintaining that. It was an oversight in my mind when it was made historic district, simply because the residential component of the central historic district, and the fact, as John has mentioned, that it was not ours to take anyway, it belonged to the state, and they weren't gonna lease it back to us, they had their own intentions. And just this last year, the New Hampshire Department of Historic Research has done a reassessment as part of the supplemental environmental impact survey of doing replacing the General Sullivan Bridge. And in that assessment is when they came up with the prescribed solution for Newington. At that point, they assessed the Bloody Point area as having historical significance, and they downplayed it and indicated it is not a factor because it has been too changed and disrupted by the underpass and the multiple changes to the turnpike since 1932. They did indicate that the railroad and toll booth building had merit in standing and recognition, and their prescribed remedy was this one: it would be offered with the store for sale with a historical covenant on. They would provide $150,000 to use as appropriate. They would also provide a full assessment of its possible value and use and functions, that they would do the assessment and survey. This is probably a repeat of what you heard, because the letter came to the selectmen about. So that's going to be provided to them, and that it would be sold at fair market value. They would look at a transfer within to the town as the town requested. However, if it's transferred at no cost, there is a sequence of state agencies that have first priority to get that. So it could go to them along with the money to do that if they would refurbish that small building. But there's no property that goes with it because it's done on that. So from that standpoint, I believe that we should act, because I think it's pretty clear that the state intends to sell that the Department of Historical Resources is not interested in taking it on as a part themselves. And what they will do in this assessment is they will look at the possible uses that could be there, of which I believe that the Historic Society has said their easiest and best use to go forward is to call it housing. And they have total control of that, and they will pick and choose. I believe they will have a better personal feeling. They will have a better funded opportunity to have a business there, be it offices, commercial setup, that can support an open museum for this, however they choose, and still support a beautiful area with views on the waterfront for offices or whatever. But if we allow that to continue to be considered or advertised as residential in their sales and proceedings, we will not be, if we change next year, it will take that back. Be viewed as taking that back. And from the standpoint of bait and switch, that will not help the state's case. And from the standpoint, we will be in a better position. And I believe there are many options that can be done and actually can fund that very well. But that's my opinion on it. And that's what the state will, if we give them the bounds of non-residential, they will look at the office district opportunities, and they will find multiple uses there. So, that's my
All
opinion.
right. Are we ready for a vote? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Okay, the final one is amendment number 6, which is the new rules governing ground mounted solar arrays. And I'm not gonna read through these unless you want me to. Again, we talked about these, we thought of, we discussed, individual words.
Acknowledgement.
Right, so, unless there's a question, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Any discussions? We've gone over these now quite a lot.
I'll make a motion to move forward with public hearing, and move forward with the warrant for Article 6.
Okay, second. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Rick. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any?
So that's it?
Let me ask one comment. John, do you need, concurrence the board to go through with the, administrative changes that I proposed?
I do, I didn't print them out, Chris,
Everyone has been emailed.
Chris, we have other administrative changes we gotta make.
yeah, I've got these two on
What
top.
I'm trying to do is get these done, then we'll have a meeting just for the administrative changes, and then we're gonna actually update the ordinance, or ordinances these. That will, all that will be done prior to us printing that out, I will let you get that done within a month of the warrant articles being passed, within a month. In fact, before that, I'll let you get it before town meeting. All right, so that would also include we can also include not just the administrative changes, but we can also include the, regulations that you want to talk about, like the ones tonight you mentioned. All right? I gotta look at the workload and the time constraints we have with other things, but we're gonna get it done before we print this out.
My only question was, does anybody feel that those changes are, A, not needed, or, not useful, or B, are more than administrative?
First, I would like to look at them better. I think if you're trying to improve it, I think it's an improvement, what I can see, but I would like to look at it more closely. I just haven't looked at them that closely, to be very honest with you. I looked at them, I looked at all of them, they all seem to make sense. I think we should look at it at that point, is that okay? I think you put a lot of effort into it. Sorry, we're just time of the day. Anyone else? All right, any other business?
We have two, well, we have one set of, I don't know what I did, I don't even know what I did. But on your agenda, I have the minutes of 12/13, January 10th, and then I actually added the 1/17 minutes. But Gene, did I send the minutes out for 12/13, or have we addressed those already?
You said that at the 10th meeting of the workshop.
Oh, did you guys approve?
And let me just.
Oh, that's right, yes, I think you're right.
Well, no, I don't see anything in those minutes that says we voted on.
Well,
the
Jane,
minutes.
I wrote the minutes, so.
So,
um,
there's your first mistake.
Peter, did we?
Did,
I thought we.
I think we adopted the 12/13 minutes at the work session.
well, so that,
Well, Bob, do you remember Bob or not?
what about the 6th? Wasn't the 6th?
6 was
one?
already adopted, I know that. According to Eleanor, those were adopted.
Okay,
So the 13th,
I'm gonna check on
I
that.
thought we did the 13th.
at the work session, right?
What did I say in my email to you? I'm gonna look it up.
Okay, so what I have here right now, I have before me, I have December 27th, I have January 10th, and then January 17th minutes. Those are the ones I'm looking at voting on for tonight, that's all we have.
Correct.
All right,
Hold
so
on
that
just
being
a
the case,
No, 27th, that's the.
No, excuse me,
oh,
John.
I'm sorry, no, there's another one here, where is it?
You only have 2. I think you have.
No, one you handed out,
The 10th and the 17th.
and the one you sent out today.
Yeah,
For clarity,
I thought you handed that out as well.
I did. I think the 2 that you have are the 10th and the 17th.
There is no indication, I have nothing in looking, I literally looked through the approval of minutes and what corrections were needed. December 6th, there was no approval, and that would have occurred on December 13th. And what happened on that date was they weren't moved on. And then the last meeting we had, which would have been January 10th,
Yeah.
that there was a decision to not vote on the December 13 ones. So unless you all move to approve those minutes,
Well, it's in the
During
minutes.
that
It's in-
work
It's in the
session.
minutes, it's in your minutes of January 10th. On the last page, that Peter moved the minutes of December 12th. Russ seconded and all were in favor.
okay. Okay, so that's on the 13th,
Yep.
but not the 6th is what I meant. I
No,
guess.
so the 6 minutes were adopted. Right here in your minutes, Jane.
They were?
Go to your minutes, your January 10th minutes.
Okay.
You have them?
I was looking at my notes.
The last page, line 411. Peter moved them.
Yep.
Okay,
And then Peter moved to adjourn shortly thereafter.
that was the 6th on the 10th.
Yeah, so the 6 was adopted.
But it's the 13th, I guess. that I'm not-
You just said the 6 were never adopted.
You're right, you're
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So,
But when was the 13th?
I believe the 13th were adopted at our work session on Monday, the 17th.
Okay.
That's what I recall, but
Okay.
Chris, do you?
I had no problem with either the 6th or the 13th. I thought they were
I thought they were
adopted
fine.
while I was gone, and if it was the following time, I concurred with it.
Okay, great.
Well, because I took the minutes of the 17th, and I probably didn't do a great job.
You did a fabulous job.
Maybe the board should consider, making a motion to approve the minutes of December 13th, January 10th, and if you wanna deal with January 17th, that's fine. So those are the 3 dates.
Okay.
I thought January 17th was fine. There's a couple, estimates and things there, but, those are things you're gonna correct anyway.
Okay, let's start off with January 13th, or did you say?
December 13th, you don't have them, but you sent them out before, so.
I was positive we did it, my God.
They were in, you included them in the
Oh, you
package.
did? All right, sorry.
I move that we accept the minutes of December 13th.
No, it's not good. I know I had it, I knew I had the minutes.
Well, I was trying to remind you.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find the 13th, I know I had it,
Would you like mine?
I knew I had it. I can't see.
Here you go.
I read them today.
I believe you.
I didn't have any comments on the 13th as well. I read through the whole thing. The only one I had comments on was the 10th.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we're talking about December 13th.
First, I need everyone to, I got a motion, but I didn't get approval on the
You got a
13th.
motion and a second.
Yep, got that.
Okay.
All in
Any
favor?
any comments? If there being no comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? 13 is accepted.
Okay, on the 10th.
10, I have one. Whoop. Put that back. Okay, on the 10th. Any motion?
The only thing I would say in the 10th is, Jane, I think under other business A, it was not a waiver request. I think we should say a discussion about a potential waiver request, because we didn't act on it on the 10th.
Okay.
Is
Can I
that
go,
right?
can I go back to the 13th for a second? I do have a change on the 13th. I just found it. I knew I
Okay.
had it.
I thought you had something.
Line 111, no, excuse me, page 2, line 81.
Line 81, yeah.
And it says, in those, chair heaters said there were other solutions besides putting the line over the bridge. And they had comma, and they could flush out the stagnant water. Just take out, just end of, put a period instead of place of the comma where the bridge is, and take out the rest, and they could flush out the stagnant water. That doesn't make sense, all right? So I'm sorry, so was everyone okay with that modification? Okay, thank you. I knew I had it.
So then, Gene, on January 10th, all I think we should do is say, there's a discussion regarding a potential waiver or a waiver request, because we didn't act on it that night. That's all. Everything else is good.
That's true, I read everything else, I agree with that. Okay, so we have a motion, we got a motion and a second, the two of you will second, right?
On the 13th,
Yeah, okay, what about the 10th?
I'll make the same motion for the 10th.
All right, and I'll second, thank you, Rick. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, let's go now to the 17th. John, I looked at these, I thought it was fine.
The only thing I did, there was a woman in attendance, and I don't know her name, but I don't know if anybody knows who it was.
She was right over here on the side.
She was somewhere over there, and I don't know who it was.
She was an HDC member?
I think so.
Yeah, what, Margaret, not Margaret, oh, okay.
No, maybe she was over here. I don't, do you know, Chris? Who was here?
Who is here? Sitting next to me was Becky St. Germain.
Yeah, I got that. There was another woman that I didn't know.
There was,
Helen Frank was here.
living down in Gunwell Landing,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of her name right now.
Joe
Joe Haskell.
Joe?
Joe Haskell.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
That's
Haskel?
H-A-S-K-E-L.
Okay. That's just, I just didn't get her name, so I can add that.
She's a HCC board alternate.
Okay, all right. I'll add that.
Anything else from anybody?
My name is two S's on the end. First name is two S's, somewhere down in there. I don't
Your first name, Jane?
Your first name has two S's?
He
No.
doesn't, but he doesn't want it.
Oh.
Oh,
There's also one other,
Shouldn't.
I was like, oh, Chris?
oh, got it, got it. There's also one other what, Chris?
That makes sense.
somewhere earlier in the book, it's just a, it's the or something without an E.
Okay, all right, I'll
Something,
look at it.
it's minor type.
Yep, I already found it.
We do have a motion in a second, right?
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Ben, make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right. Bob, make a second.
I want to add on line 18, Peggy's comments were a whole lot longer than that, John.
I was telling,
I think you paraphrased.
I was telling Jane that I've got horrible ADD, so, yes, I did paraphrase.
I might say outstandingly.
Shouldn't say et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
And then Sue, and then Sue.
You forgot her comment about think people.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? What's the word I want? Abstention. Okay, motion, minutes are set. Any opposed, any abstentions? Good night, everybody,
So,
thank you very much.
and before we adjourn, just,
We adjourn?
I don't know what time the meeting is gonna start on the 10th, I'm assuming it's 6:30, because I think Jane can't get here much before then, and she may not even be here, so, and as Dennis said, this may be, it's partly Conservation Commission meeting, and then it'll be a joint meeting, the statute does say that the planning board, runs the meeting, so, I'll talk to Jane, I think the first part of the meeting could be very brief with Stoneface, maybe a half an hour. But I'll look for the agenda, because it won't be, I'll email it to you and mail it to you, but it won't be, that's all you're gonna get, all right?
Thanks, John, for
Yep.
a lot of work.
I move to adjourn.
Second that. All in favor?
Yeah.
Any opposed? John, do we have any updates on new things in town that you can share with us at this point? No. No? All right, good, thank you.
Sure.